And we're on Twitter Space. Let's try it over here. I was like, okay, give me a shot.
You're like, okay, let me log on. Yeah.
Heavy lies the crown, Tyler. Heavy
Yeah,
lies the
right,
crown.
right.
Yeah.
I was actually just curious what it would be like.
It's like driving. It's like driving a rent a car that you like, but when you get back to your old car, you're like, I like my car better.
Well, that's
More
good to
comfortable
know.
in your own home, right? Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing we said was like, "Where's the music?"
Oh, wow. It would have been silent. Yeah. No
And where's
sound
our
effects.
music now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We
Obvi-
It's
do need
got
our
a lot of.
music.
It's got a lot of cool features, right? The
Whoop. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
it's got cool features with the links up top. I think we're getting that tomorrow, and then
Right.
the
Yeah, it's called
the emojis are nice.
the
The stage
PTL,
limit
right?
sucks.
Pin the
The
link.
stage limit sucks.
Yeah, that stage limit totally sucks.
It's not just that; it's kind of your user experience too, right? It's very difficult to look at what's going on. Like,
Without getting too snobby-ish, this is the German experience over here. This is like the European vehicle where you're, driver center,
Heated seats.
right?
Yeah. The heated seats of Clubhouse. So, we're gonna start just a minute late here.
okay, I see hands up in the air.
Hold on here. Hold on. Okay. Why is my browser looking all weird today? Here we go. Okay.
Everyone, all the devices are
Like that.
having a flu.
Like that. Gotta check that. Lakeisha, living the good life, getting that beach massage. The funny thing is, I'm tempted to do the same. Do the beach massage version of Tech News Around the World.
That would be nice. You know what's so crazy is that I hadn't been to Crystal Bay since Friday when you showed me the live cam.
Yep.
And now I've seen like 7 people on this beach. I think that'll be the barometer to like the stream of tourists that are finding their way here.
You have seen nothing yet. Crystal Bay,
I know.
when the people come back, you will not have a place to lay down a blanket on that entire beach.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But enjoy
Lakeisha,
it now.
Have you found your? Go ahead. Have you found your villa, Lakeisha?
I think so. You know what? And there's a place near where I literally almost the next property over. So I'm going to take a look. They have a 2-bedroom pool villa. So I think I'm going to put that on lock. And yeah, we'll see. I'll let you know.
At least one with a guest room.
That's what I'm thinking because I think my parents are probably going to want to come over in the next month or two now that it's easier to come into Thailand. And then just to have, friends or whomever. So some tech news fam that may want to spend a couple of days with me, then hop over and spend a week or so with Tyler. That works too.
Nice. But Tyler, if you're going to have a massage and do tech news at the same time, will you fall asleep?
No, I don't.
When they're like,
by the way, Lakeisha, if you haven't yet, the real pro move is to get a 6-hand massage. You get 3. It takes 3 masseuses, and
I've not done that.
One on each leg and one on the other end of the table on your shoulders. It's hard to explain. Your brain kind of freaks out.
Well, and Cheryl, you probably know the thing with Thai massage, at least for me, is that it's more therapeutic than like relaxing, right? So,
yes.
So when I think of a 6-hand massage, I think of like 6 hands pulling me in 6 different directions.
Yeah,
but afterwards, you feel great.
Yes,
yeah.
6 hands is better to do hot oil style, and even best of all, coconut oil. So anyway.
Bellini style.
I think I'm pretty much ready. Is everybody else ready?
Yes, let's do this. Air horn.
Air horn. There we go. So the top story today, happy Wednesday, is from Google. Because as I told you...
tweet your live Twitter, right?
I already did the live Twitter thing, yeah.
Perfect.
So as I said yesterday, we are now in the peak of Q3 earnings seasons because both Google and Microsoft reported since we met last time. And then before we meet Next time will be Amazon and Apple. And what that means is, with all four of them happening in a 48-hour period, those are the four biggest companies on the stock market, essentially, at this point. And boy, is that going to rock the boat. They're going to have some waves. And Google did their Q3 report, revenue of $65 billion, up 41% since last year. That's tremendous growth. Income of $18.9 billion, up from $11 billion last year, which is separate. Income and revenue are two separate things. Take a business class, regardless of what you plan to do in life. You'll thank me later. Google Cloud revenue up of $5 billion, up from $3.4 billion. That's a substantial increase as well. And Alphabet reports traffic acquisition costs of $11 billion versus $11 billion last year. It was basically the same. YouTube had a record $7.2 billion in Q3 ad revenue, up from $5 billion. So again, tremendous growth going on over in Google land. Alphabet's other bets had a Q3 operating loss of $1.2 billion, up from $1 billion. That's all kind of minor, all that. So the question is, how did the market respond to Google yesterday? Because they report immediately after the market closes. So the market did what it did on the stock exchange. The market closes, and then they do their quarter report. And as expected, it goes a little bit crazy because it's very, very low volume after the market closes, because you have to have aftermarket access, which I happen to have. But your average trader does not have access to trade after the market closes. But we'll see when it opens, when the market opens in about 9 hours from now, how Google trades tomorrow. But generally, I suspect it depends on their guidance, honestly. Other sources like Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance says Google earnings top estimates as online advertising remains robust.
Didn't it trade down a little bit after market?
It did. Yeah, very low volume, but down. Yeah, but then it actually, the most recent trades in the post market after hours was actually really not much down at all. It went down for a bit and then bounced back up after market.
It's up so much even recently, compared to a lot of even other tech stocks, that a lot of it was built in. So when you have that, you could report gangbuster quarter, and the stock will almost still trade down a little bit because there's so much anticipation built into the valuation at that point.
Yeah. The next one is Microsoft did their report. $45 billion, up 22% year over year. A fantastic growth for a company of that size. We're talking the biggest companies in the world growing double-digit percents. This, 20% and 40%. That's remarkable for companies of this size. Net income of $20 billion, up 48% year over year. Holy sweet smokies! Azure revenue up 50%. That's their cloud. Which, by the way, that was also essentially what Google Cloud did. They both grew about 50%, both of their cloud companies. And LinkedIn revenue up 42% year over year. Jesus Christ. Big tech is just rocking in Q3. And that's very good news for the stock market as a whole. Because these are the leading companies on the stock market. So in the tomorrow, we could see some nice positive upward pressure on the whole market, especially tech in general, because what happens is investors think that Amazon, which is reporting tomorrow, and Apple, which is reporting tomorrow, they assume, oh, well, the other big tech companies did really well. I bet these do as well. But if Amazon and Apple do report above estimates tomorrow, that will really send the market, and especially tech specifically, put some nice upward pressure on the tech sector for the next several days. So that if that happens, once in a while this happens, happens quite often in recent years, where the tech sector gets this nice upward pressure because they all get A pluses on their quarterly book reports. And then that becomes incredibly safe trading. That becomes an unusually safe environment if you want to do some day trading. Just don't be shorting them as a day trader. You want to be on the longs, what we call the long side, where you're betting that the prices will be going up, because they very much could. But this is all preemptive, assuming that Amazon and Apple are going to have positive upside, and they probably should, because there was a whole lot of lockdowns in the past 3 months. That means Amazon should have been busy. Apple is building up their ad network. Apple's got and these M1 processors and everything, like the responses, the early reviews of the M1 processors and the M1 Max and Pro, everything's looking very peachy for Apple. However, the chip shortage issue will put constraints on Q4, and I guarantee you Apple's going to say in their earnings call after they share the data, they're going to say all bets off for Q4 because of chip shortages. We can, expect strong headwinds. They're going to give what we call kind of, downward facing guidance. They call it guidance in trading land. And that guidance is likely to be, they want to lower expectations for Q4 because they don't know, because they're not in complete control of all the chips and supplies that they need.
Tends to lower,
yes.
Expectations
yes.
as long as I follow the company. So yeah.
Right. So, but that works against our hopes that things trade up on Apple after their.
I think people build it into how they look at Apple because they've been doing it for years.
Yes.
I mean, you have companies that are always
correct
more than they need to be, and then exactly.
This is a great point. Some companies traditionally give downward guidance kind of by default. Apple and Amazon both notably do that anyways, and that's who's reporting later today, tomorrow, depending on where you are. And the market, people who follow Wall Street know that to expect downward guidance from Apple and Amazon. Other companies don't. Other companies kind of give upward guidance generally. So
under promise, over deliver, right?
Yes, that's been Apple and Amazon's approach from the beginning. But it removes a lot of pressure on them so they can stay nimble and creative and not have to meet Wall Street expectations and, overinflated expectations. So we will eagerly await the Amazon and Apple results. We've got the Microsoft and Google reports, and kudos to them for some really strong numbers on their Q3 reports. And someone's DMing me saying that Q4 might be tough across the board due to supply chain issues. Yes, exactly right. Yeah, as I said. So the next one is amid the harassment fallout. This is about Activision Blizzard, the makers of Call of Duty and other massive video games. One of the biggest video game companies on the planet is Activision Blizzard. And there's some more news in the ever-going drama over there at Activision Blizzard. And this one says, amid harassment fallout, Activision Blizzard says it will pause plans for next year's BlizzCon, their big annual event where they get everybody together, to focus on supporting its teams and game development. So the February show nixed in favor of supporting our teams and progressing development following an online-only BlizzCon earlier this year. Okay. We'll keep going. Next up is Adobe, the makers of Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe Premiere, which is still a very, very big company, actually. They're worth hundreds of millions in market cap. However, there's been those of us who've been using Photoshop since back in the day, myself since around 99, when it was like Photoshop 3.0. And I've been using Photoshop since 3.0 for about 20 years now. And I've recently switched over to Canva. And I'm not alone. A lot of people have switched over to Canva. A, because it's free. B, because it's web-based. C, because it's a joy and easy and fun to use and does a lot of the stuff you want to get done from Photoshop. And Canva has exploded to a $5 billion valuation seemingly overnight and must be cannibalizing a bit of Photoshop usage.
Tyler,
Yeah,
it's actually 40 or 50
you're right.
billion.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't
You're
mean
right.
to correct you.
You're right. You're right. You're right. It's the valuation is now 50 billion. I said 5. Thank you for the correction. And that's tremendous growth to grow a 50 billion valuation company seemingly overnight in that kind of a way. And so Photoshop must be a little bit nervous. And the question is, the big difference between Canva and Photoshop is that Canva's in your browser. It's online. And boy, is that handy. It saves all your files for you. It's beautiful. It's in your browser. You don't even have to download anything. Photoshop, being the legacy player, has been incredibly slow, incredibly reluctant, hesitant to adapt to this online world we are living in. And now the announcement is Adobe announces Photoshop and Illustrator web apps, meaning in your browser, in the cloud, online, to improve collaboration, make quick edits, and more. And, as the headline should say, to hopefully get market share back from Canva. And the real question is, why were they so slow to do this? Well, I guess they were comfortable with their legacy market, and they must have sensed they were starting to lose market share, and now they're addressing it as they absolutely should.
It's also Figma, Tyler. Figma's also
Yes,
took that market away from Adobe.
yeah, they're being
Figma is great.
they're being paper cut from many sides, similar to Microsoft Office, where Google Docs came out and Airtable and all of these Notion, and there's a whole bunch of companies now eating Microsoft Office's lunch, in the cloud, and they were also quite slow to adopt to the cloud and into the browser until they started losing market share.
I was also going to say, I feel like they probably underestimated the scale of like the creator market, because that's what Canva has been covering. It feels like Photoshop was more like for professional who actually have design skills, while now on social media people just do drag and drop design for Canvas. So I guess that they probably thought that market wasn't as a sizable opportunity, but it's a good point, because Canva even has a mobile app, like you could do design in your pocket. So
Yeah, Canva is really nailing the point that every Instagram influencer, TikTok user, anyone doing anything on any social media platform needs a tool to edit their photos in a simplified Photoshop kind of way, which Canva has really been able to take a clean slate approach to address that massive user base, and they've done it perfectly, and they're really benefiting as a result. It's kind of, I'm kicking myself. I didn't even recognize that massive opportunity. What an incredible opportunity that is, when you have all these people, young folks who don't know what Photoshop is. They want a cloud-based solution. They want to edit their little profile pics and banners and that they have on their social media profiles. My goodness, and all of their content that they're putting into their social media profiles. Figma made a custom tailored solution for that, and that was such a huge market opportunity. Anyway, the next big article is from Casey Newton, who has his tech blog called Platformer, and it says that the Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen's documents have been useful to the press and groups opposing Facebook, but reporting should now expand to explore Haugen and her backers' goals. And he writes, and I'll read the first little bit. It says, at the end of 2019, the group...
Tyler, I really hate to bump in right now.
Yeah, go.
Have you seen any of the chatter on the back channel about The Verge?
No.
All right, so Dr. Danish broke this on the back channel. The Verge had a Clubhouse session, and apparently they admitted that they were colluding. Like 20 plus journalists were on a Slack channel, basically coordinating articles and shit.
Yeah, but that's kind of
I'm not
well
even. I mean, I think they dove even deeper. I mean, okay, sorry to interrupt. Maybe you knew it, but to me that seems.
I think that was. I had assumed that, and I don't even think it was an assumption. I felt incredibly confident that that's exactly what was happening.
I mean, I think the sentiment was that they were bragging, and I'll shut up.
I don't think
I think what happened is they got the leftovers after the initial reporting was done. Some of the extra documents were shared with a larger group of journalists. The New York Times wrote about this a couple days ago.
Yeah. Well, there's all. While we're on the topic, who was it? Where did he go? Antonio Garcia Martinez did an interesting tweet thread that I will tweet out here in a second. And Antonio Garcia Martinez was you might remember that name. He used to be in Clubhouse quite frequently, actually, with Eric in the Big Ideas Club, where they used to do some fantastic rooms, by the way. And maybe they still do, because I'm living in they're on an American time zone schedule, and I'm in a more European Asian time zone schedule. So for all I know, they might still be doing them. I hope they are. Anyway, so Antonio was also, you might know that name because he was the Facebook ads guru that Apple hired to bring over to Apple. He sold his house, relocated, moved over, to be more central to Apple HQ. He also was the author of the New York Times bestseller, Chaos Monkeys, I believe was the name of the title. And that was 5 years ago, and it had some rather unsavory opinions, kind of sentences about the women in the Bay Area, how he characterized them. And so there was a signature collection at Apple HQ saying that we don't feel welcome with him joining Team Apple. And so when he arrived at Cupertino, they informed him that he, in fact, would not be joining Apple after all. And so that's the full context. So he took to Twitter in the past few hours, and I'm tweeting out his tweet thread now, where he says, for the millionth time, the media is fabricating a moral panic around their belated discovery that Facebook does what they do, but better, more scalably, and more profitably. Meaning ads. They're much better at ads than the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. And boy, are they way, 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 way better, because they have a lot of data about their users that the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal do not have about their users. And so they built an ad marketplace, and he helped build the ad marketplace at Facebook. He was the ad guru at Facebook. So when he says, hey, y'all, all of these headlines that these legacy dying dinosaur media companies are doing in their journalistic jihad against Facebook, their coordinated attack to try and sabotage their economic opponent, Facebook. Yeah, well, for the millionth time, this is his tweet, for the millionth time, the media is fabricating a moral panic around their belated discovery that Facebook does what they do, but better, more scalably, and more profitably. Bingo, correct, 1,000%. As I've been saying, this whole journalistic jihad is directly aimed at the big bully who came and took their lunch money.
Hey, Tyler, I was
Yes.
actually in that room earlier with The Verge.
Yes.
And Chris, he wasn't going, it wasn't that sort of vindictive, I forget the term that you just used, but he did say, look, we're all platforms. There's the big, huge social media platforms, there's smaller ones, and yes, we are platforms as well. And we are all competing. And yes, this seems to have been fed to us, and there's definitely backers, and that makes it, interesting and questionable. But that said, these are the documents, and they're not all out yet. And they had a couple of people from Facebook's integrity committee that had been disbanded, who also happened to be in the room or cruising through, who kind of spoke. They've started a new group. So I thought he was actually quite fair and not at all one-sided, but he did totally say, like, we're competitors. And yes, we are equally at odds. And yes, you have to ramp up numbers. And this is just what happens. It was more of a societal and benefits and just understanding how these things work versus a targeted group. And it was actually fascinating to hear. So it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. I wasn't there, so.
It was pretty even, but it was good.
In his tweet thread, Antonio says, there's almost nothing novel in the leaked Facebook documents other than confirmation of Facebook's slowing growth. Everything being discussed now was being discussed years ago. There were whole chapters in Chaos Monkeys, his New York Times bestselling book, about it. Big whoop. As for why this is getting nonstop coverage, aside from mere anti-Facebook animus, the aesthetics of all of this, a compelling whistleblower, leaked docs, internal discussions of known trade-offs plays precisely into the necessary Aaron Sorkin drama and regnant journalist epistemology.
No, he brings it up, Tyler, to your point. They were fed a lot of documents, and also he says, look, Facebook had an integrity committee. They're way ahead of the other groups. He was just very factual. Like, they are, here's what they have. They're ahead in this area, and here's what the platforms do, and pretty even. He actually didn't give a lot of opinion because he's like, I'm a journalist. I report these things. I'm not an expert in any of these areas. So if you want to talk about kids and the stats that you've brought up all along about the 1/3 of girls, claim harm, 2/3 don't. So someone else came in and said, look, I'm going to be controversial, and challenged him and said, look, there are plenty of stats showing the benefit. He said, yeah, you're right. And then they talked about another one that was I think it was a 7% on maybe it was boys or something. But he goes, yeah, you're right. And that's, again, a very low number. So to your point, he was just saying these are all over the place in that room is what they were saying. But and that they're all platforms and they're all at stake here.
Can I get one clarifying question? And I'm sorry, I'm unmiked and I need to switch over to Twitter real quick to read a direct quote. So 1 second. So Dr. Danish said, he essentially saw. Hang on, sorry. Oh gosh, I lost it now. Basically, to the extent that they count on Facebook counts on teens, which is exactly why they need to stop teens from using Facebook. Meaning, the media needs to stop teens from using Facebook, which is why they're on this assault.
No,
Did you hear anything like that, or
no? So I had to jump about just barely a few minutes before it ended, and I actually was a little bit late joining. But what happened is a dean of well, I'll tell you where it went. No, here's what you may have heard, Chris. So a dean of one of the colleges, of one of the UC colleges, who's on Facebook, said they're not. Facebook has lost its teen presence, right? So, but they said that Facebook is a tool a lot of professors in universities use to post class curriculums and tools and materials. And she was against universities using that as a tool because it the deal was a little bit of the ethical ramifications about sending people, any category, and she was using the students. But do you want to send them to any platform? Again, Facebook, TikTok, wherever. But so she was saying she was against universities using that tool because you end up sending kids there, and that increases that kind of hook and usage. And somebody that was there from Facebook, or maybe it was him, maybe it was a reporter, because they do have a lot more documents than what they're revealing. He also said, he goes, look, there's a lot of deep stuff that we aren't revealing and metrics that we aren't revealing. And I can't remember why, but maybe they're going to reveal them later. Or maybe it's not totally vetted yet. But because Facebook is on full ramp up right now to go for teens because they know they are decreasing so much in that market, and that they are a growth oriented company. And he didn't say, again, he didn't pass judgment on it, but he did acknowledge, he just said, look, this is it. They're a growth oriented company and this is their market. And that's where they're going.
So I have the direct quote, and sorry, Tyler.
Okay.
Inside of the tweet, I'm sorry, inside of our chat, during about 12:40 p.m., Danish says he also admitted that teens are critical to Facebook's business model since they are the influencer internally within the household. And then a quote, now in quotations now, which is why it's so important to stop them from using it. And so that's the direct quote. I don't know how I wish I was there to listen to it and get the tone, but did you hear anything to that kind of
it sounds
extent?
familiar. Maybe, but I don't. Yeah, I can't say. There was something around that, but I can't remember.
Okay.
I actually can't speak to it.
Yeah,
So,
we'll find out from Dr. Danish tomorrow. I'm sure he actually gets sleep. So thanks, Jen.
Okay. Yeah. One other interesting thing that I found and predicted, and you tell me if I did not predict this, that during the Facebook files, the Wall Street Journal had one such file and headline, and the headline said, Facebook AI only removes 3 to 5% of hate speech. That was the headline. And I said, you know what? And then Facebook, in their wisdom, responded nearly immediately to that headline saying, that's you found an interesting data point again in some document that somebody wrote after their lunch meeting at El Pollo Loco, and that data point doesn't mean what you think it means, because we don't use AI to remove hate speech. We use human moderators for that, and our human moderators remove 99.999% of hate speech. So you writing a big headline in the Wall Street Journal that Facebook AI only removes 3 to 5% of hate speech is going to intentionally misinform the populace. And I said, remember, you're now going to have a meme of people walking around thinking that Facebook doesn't remove 95% of hate speech, despite the fact that you've never seen hate speech in Facebook yourself. Remember that comment a week ago or whenever that headline came out, yes? So, sure enough, look what I found from online. There are now victims of this intentional misinformation campaign, and these are some very notable victims of this very intentional misinformation campaign. And if you're American, you will know these victims. These victims are first up, and I've got the receipts. You're gonna hear from their own mouths them spewing misinformation to millions of people on America's most popular TV shows. Here we go. This first up is America's most beloved comedian, Stephen Colbert, who has one of the biggest TV shows in all of America. And watch what he has to say about this issue.
Unsurprisingly, a lot of misinformation has to do with Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Last year, he testified before Congress that Facebook removes 94% of hate speech, but the company's own researchers estimated it was removing less than 5%. That's a hell of a spread. Mom, I know I said I got 94% on the math test, but it was actually 5%. I didn't lie. I just really suck at math. The CEO.
So now you've got America's biggest TV audience now being subjected to this misinformation. Right? Next up, Jimmy Kimmel, also one of the biggest TV shows in all of America.
Public safety and their own bottom line. Turns out they weigh them incorrectly. Mark Zuckerberg told Congress last year, he said the company removes 94% of the hate speech it finds, but the researchers discovered Facebook was actually removing less than 5% of hate speech. And you know how they discovered this? They went on Facebook. Yeah. I don't know, are we surprised by this?
So as predicted, you're going to have people read these headlines from the Wall Street Journal saying that Facebook AI only removes 3 to 5% of hate speech. And then thinking that means Facebook only removes 3 to 5%. There's the evidence right there. Those are America's biggest TV shows now reporting intentional misinformation from the Wall Street Journal to mass audiences, the biggest audiences in all of America.
This is really more interesting than we discussed this in depth, and you are very, very correct, sir. One of the things here, if you look at the exact wording, both these two comedians use exact same wording. Have we heard this from another state on the other side of the Pacific from the US that they had the same fucking message, word by word, and there was no coordination behind it? Sorry, sir. Yeah. You have been taken.
When you cheat at math, you better be right.
So it's
but it is word for word.
No, that's what I mean. It's like when you cheat at math, right? When you copy from someone on math, they better be right. Because if they're wrong.
Mom, I'm bad at math.
But now we have the Wall Street Journal intentionally spreading misinformation. A publication who's renowned for their whole business is predicated on giving you correct information. And now we have evidence that they are intentionally misinforming the public. Intentionally. They are intentionally misinforming, which is their main criticism of Facebook. That Facebook is spreading misinformation. And here you are intentionally spreading misinformation.
And a point here. One of the things here is that these large comedian shows, they don't write all their content themselves. They are usually have scripts that they actually purchase, and they have people find these things out. We should really go for the rat that actually is making these jokes and writing these ones for them, because this is not the content of what they just read in line from what somebody else has said. So we actually have some script rat somewhere that is very, very
Okay.
bad.
So the next biggest headline, coincidentally, today, October 27th, we read through the quarterly earnings reports and Adobe announces Photoshop and Illustrator online. The next big one is from the Washington Post, and it's about Facebook documents. And it says, Facebook documents show that its news feed algorithm treated emoji reactions. So when people are leaving emoji reactions in the Facebook feed, it treats emoji reactions as 5 times more valuable than likes. Dun dun dun! Wow, what an amazing revelation! I know. Everyone, sit down. You might want to grab a chair. If you're driving, pull over, please, because this is some serious breaking news. They've got documents. The Washington Post wants you to know that they've got documents. The whistleblower is blowing the whistle, folks. Here it is. Here's the biggest moment. America has had some big tragedies. We've had 9/11. We had World War I, World War II, Civil War, and now this. On top of all of it, Facebook documents show, according to the Washington Post, that emojis, when you leave a little winky face to a response to your friend, to Aunt Betty's Facebook post, when you leave a winky face, Facebook thinks that that's 5 times more valuable than if you just like the post. That's what
I'm laughing. So next they'll find that if you have a video you'll be higher in rank.
This is the type of groundbreaking journalism that we've come to depend on from the Washington Post. And now we know.
But that's
Winkygate. We're calling this Winkygate. We're on to you, Facebook. We are all up on you now. We got you. We got the receipts. The winky face is more valuable than the like. You're toast, buddy. Your days are numbered. We got you.
Well, Tyler, maybe it's because only the younger people use winky faces as opposed to the older people who only know how to click the
God only knows what happens when you use the tongue out emoji or the crazy face with the crazy eyes. That's when the head is sideways.
Demographic.
We got you now, Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg, we got you. Tongue out emoji, bro. You're done. Toasted. They got Washington Post. Well done, sir. I see the Pulitzer Prize coming your way. Here it comes. The Pulitzer Prize heading to you for cracking the case that the tongue emoji is what's really running the show here.
The reason they probably count a lot higher is that clicking the like button is one thing you can do with your thumb. To select an emoji is actually engagement, that you actually go into the library, you pick out the emoji and you post it. So I can see that there's actually a real action behind having a heavier point for an active engagement. I don't think it counts if it's an abogin or a tongue emoji. The thing is that you take the engagement, that you actually pick a picture or pick a result. I think that's why we see that.
Yeah. So
well, that makes sense, but the fact that they're reporting it as news is, I think, just kind of silly.
So here's the point: is they had thousands of documents. They went through all the documents. Facebook stock is up on the day they did their coordinated jihad of dozens of documents, about 50 in total, that all launched Monday. And Facebook stock has gone up in the meanwhile, and the New York Times stock has gone down in the meanwhile. And they are now they're really getting into the real deep, heavy-hitting articles. They really saved the best for last with this emoji one, which tells you that, boy, they're definitely not scraping the bottom of the barrel of these documents that they've got. No, not at all. they're just ramping up. They're really saving the best for last here. So I can't wait for the incredible revelations that we can expect when America wakes up tomorrow. Whew! Wow, what a barn burner. So the next one is from The Verge, and it says that Joe Biden names Jessica Rosen Warcel to officially lead the FCC. Nominates Gigi Sean as third Democratic commissioner, but it's unclear if Senate will confirm soon. Okay. Next up is, in a Senate hearing, TikTok dodges questions about its plans for biometric data collected from U.S. users after changing its terms of use to allow the practice. And I just got to hit the clap meter for the American senators who were, and that must have been Amy Klobuchar, because she's the one who actually wrote the letter saying, hey, TikTok, we noticed in your terms of service that you're now, when people click the accept button, that they're essentially agreeing to have their voice and their face data be used by TikTok. Could you please explain this? And as the headline says, they can't explain it. Here's the article. It's in its first ever congressional hearing, TikTok successfully dodged questions about what it plans to do with the biometric data its privacy policy permits it to collect on the app's U.S. users. In an update from the company's U.S. privacy policy in June, TikTok added a new section that noted the app may collect biometric identifiers and biometric information from its users' content, including things like face prints and voice prints. What is a face print and a voice print? I can hear you saying. Let me explain very quickly. If you speak, like I'm speaking right now, and you take, 10, 20, 30 seconds of that, you can then do a deep fake of me. You can build an AI bot who speaks exactly like me. And you've seen Tom Cruise videos, deep fakes that were not Tom Cruise, because if you take some Tom Cruise videos and put it into a computer and do a little little engineering magic, you can then put Tom Cruise's face on anybody's face. You've all seen this. There's apps that do this already. And now you've got Tom Cruise doing porn videos with farm animals, right? So if you are allowing TikTok to take your face print, meaning your face likeness, and your voice print, meaning your voice, they could put your face and voice on anything. And make videos of you doing anything with or without farm animals.
With, please.
And now you know why the U.S. Senate wants to know, what the hell do you plan to do with all of your users? They now have 1 billion users, face prints and voice prints. The company was questioned by multiple lawmakers on this matter today during a hearing conducted by the Senate Subcommittee on Consumer Protection, Product Safety, and Data Security. The hearing was meant to be focused on social media's detrimental impacts on children and teens, but often expanded into broader areas of concern as the lawmakers dug into the business models, internal research, and policies being made at Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. Senator Marshall Blackburn asked specifically why TikTok needed to collect a wide variety of biometric data, such as face prints, voice prints, geolocation information, browsing and search history, as well as keystroke patterns and rhythms. And that's very important as well, because as Johan very well knows, and most of the Swedes in the room knows, we have a startup company in Sweden called Behaviosec, which can identify you based on how you type on your keyboard, like a fingerprint. So why is TikTok monitoring your keystroke patterns and rhythms? Because then they'll be able to know who you are without the cookie that they previously depended on from Apple. They have what's called unique identifier on you wherever you go on the internet, and your browsing and search history, and your voice and your face and your microphone and everything you're saying and doing. Instead of directly answering the question, TikTok's VP and head of public policy, Michael Beckerman, responded by pointing out that many outside researchers and experts have looked at its policy and found that TikTok actually collects less data than many of its social media peers. He also later clarified in another round of questioning that keystroke patterns were collected in order to prevent spam bots from infiltrating the service. Blackburn pressed on to ask if TikTok was putting together a comprehensive profile or virtual dossier on each of its users, including younger kids and teens, which included their biometric data combined with their interests and search history. Now, pause that thought. This is very important because we know goddamn well this is a trick question. What Miss Blackburn is very cleverly doing, and what TikTok knows she's doing, is they're putting them in a position where they have to perjure themselves. So she says, are you doing what we know you're doing? We already know for a fact that you're doing this. And now I'm going to ask you under oath. That's why we brought you here. That's why we didn't have this meeting at Starbucks, because we wanted to get your hand on the good book, so that if you perjure yourself, you go to jail and we fine you billions of dollars. And we know that you're doing this. So let me be very clear with my question, sir. Are you doing what we know you're doing? So if he answers honestly, he's in deep shit. If he lies, he's in even deeper shit. She just put him in a complete stranglehold catch-22. So he has no choice but to avoid the question. So what's his response when she says, when pressed on the issue, are you building dossiers on your users or not? Beckerman deferred, answering this question, saying, TikTok is an entertainment platform where people watch and enjoy and create short-form videos. Nice dodge. Let me ask you again, sir. Did you or did you not kill your neighbor? I like ice cream. Ice cream tastes good. Nice dodge. Well played, sir. He had no choice. That was a gun to his head. And he could not answer that question. He could not get close to answering that question, because anything he says is fuel for his own funeral pyre. So, wow. Wow. Wow.
So Tyler,
Yeah.
can a company plead the fifth?
Wow. He's going to have to if this goes further.
Yeah, I wonder if a company can say
yes, we
don't want to self-incriminate, right?
Correct.
So,
well, interestingly, in the past 24 hours, here's why this is so interesting. Hold on one second while I find the source of this. Here it is. Here's why this is important, by the way. Because in the past 24 hours, here's this headline. U.S. retail giants, including Home Depot, Best Buy, and others, pull Chinese surveillance cameras from their shelves. Lorex and Ezviz, companies you've never heard of, and there's a very important reason you've never heard of those companies, removed from stores over links to human rights abuses. And you're thinking to yourself, what? How are Lorex and Ezviz, these companies I've never heard of, being pulled from Best Buy and Home Depot shelves for their Chinese surveillance tech human rights abuses? What's going on? Well, let me explain. U.S. retail giants Home Depot and Best Buy and others have pulled the Chinese video surveillance technology makers Lorex and Ezviz from their stores over links to human rights abuses. Home Depot said it's committed to upholding the highest standards of ethical sourcing, and we immediately stopped selling products from Lorex when this was brought to our attention. Home Depot also stopped selling Ezviz products, a spokesperson confirmed. Best Buy said it was discontinuing its relationship with both Lorex and Ezviz. Lowe's, which is Home Depot's big competitor, which did not comment, also removed Lorex from its shelves following inquiries. Lorex is a subsidiary of Dahua Technology, and Ezviz surveillance camera brand is owned by Hikvision. Dahua and Hikvision, both headquartered in China, were added to the U.S. government's economic blacklist after the companies were linked to China's ongoing efforts to suppress ethnic minorities in the Xinjiang province where Uyghur Muslims live. The U.S. government says Beijing relies heavily on Hikvision and Dahua and other technology companies to supply the surveillance equipment to surveil the Uyghur population. The Biden administration called the human rights abuses in Xinjiang a genocide and blamed Chinese video surveillance manufacturers of having been implicated in the human rights violations and abuses in the implementation of China's campaign of repression, mass arbitrary detention, and high technology surveillance against Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other members of the Muslim minority groups. UN watchdogs say Chinese authorities have detained over 1 million Uyghurs in internment camps in recent years. China has long denied the allegations. So Dahua and Hikvision are banned from doing business in America. So they, just like Huawei, which created a new brand called Honor, have created their own little new brands called Esviz and Lorex, which they are selling in the US. And now the big American retailers have been alerted to this scam, and so they're canceling their involvement in these products. Now, that's yesterday. And now you understand why are these Chinese by the way, keep in mind, the big issue for Americans is not that this technology is being used on surveillance of the Uyghurs and Kazakhs and whatnot in the internment camps in China. It's that it's being used in America. These cameras have software that, characteristic of other Chinese technologies, sends the signals back to China. Ask anybody in Africa what happened at the African Union. If Mezi was on stage, she could actually, Mezi can't say, but Mezi knows. We talked about this previously, that when China built the African Union in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, they installed it with cameras, which were sending all the data back to Beijing every night between operating hours. So these cameras are not something that we want to have in American homes and businesses. So now you know why that's all going down, and now you know why the U.S. Senate is asking TikTok, are you building dossiers on American users? Because you're a Chinese company. One of your biggest investors is, in fact, the CCP. One of your board members, one of your 3 board members is, in fact, the CCP. So let me ask you again very clearly, are you building dossiers on Americans? We know you are, but please answer the question. We're an entertainment platform. Okay. So
I am Groot.
The next one is from Ars Technica. The FCC orders. I do not pick the order of this, but what a nice coincidence. Ars Technica. Cheryl can confirm. I do not write the order of these stories, these top stories. FCC orders China Telecom to stop providing services in the U.S. within 60 days. Says the U.S. unit is subject to Chinese government control and influence. China Telecom, one of China's biggest telecom companies, does business in America, but not anymore. They have 60 days to get out. The Federal Communications Commission today voted to block China Telecom from the U.S. market, saying that the U.S. subsidiary of the Chinese state-owned enterprise is subject to exploitation, influence, and control by the Chinese government. The telco is highly likely to be forced to comply with Chinese government requests without significant legal procedures, subject to independent judicial oversight, the FCC said. The vote was 4-0. With both Democrat and both Republican approving the order to remove and terminate China Telecom authority to operate in the U.S. The FCC said its order directs China Telecom America to discontinue any domestic or international services that it provides pursuant to its Section 214 authority within 60 days following the release of the order. The FCC pointed to a quote-unquote changed national security environment with respect to China since the Commission authorized China Telecom America to provide telecommunication services in the United States almost 2 decades ago. The company's ownership and control by the Chinese government raised significant national security and law enforcement risks by providing opportunities for China Telecom, its parent entities, and the Chinese government to access, store, disrupt, or misroute U.S. communications, which in turn allow them to engage in espionage and other harmful activities against the United States, the FCC said. Wow, what an interesting coincidence. That was the next headline.
So, Tyler, what's going to be interesting is because China Telecom is an old client of mine. I've done some work with them years ago. And they actually have investments in the US. They have an investment arm and that has invested into a bunch of startups. So I wonder what's going to be the fate of those startups. It's indirect, though. So I don't know.
Just reading the other related headlines from Reuters and Politico, etc. They all say what you think they would say. And the South China Morning Post also reporting it from China. Amazed they are still in business. They won't be for long.
Tyler, why is this deepfake aspect of this not a matter of national security? Because if you gather all this data so you can deepfake folks, you can have somebody lie to their friends while their friend is lying back to them and do all manner of head games that, like we were talking the other day.
I'm going to make a prediction that if
that's going to happen.
No, my prediction is that TikTok is a unique social network in that, and it's booming because users of TikTok are being told that their content is being viewed and liked by thousands of people. Total nobody, random, boring, stupid people are posting stupid, idiotic content on TikTok, and they're being told you're getting lots of views and likes. And they're getting what to them is the most valuable thing on the planet, which is recognition.
Digital opium.
I am going to predict now that those views and like numbers that TikTok is telling those people that they're getting, they're not actually getting.
I think I was going to go there too, Tyler. I literally think it was. I'm convinced some of it's BS too.
I mean, actually, digital metrics are notoriously mostly BS anyway, even the ones that are not supposed to be.
Yes, but it's much harder for Facebook and Instagram and the American big tech social media platforms to fake this because each like, you can see who the like is, you can see who the hearts are from. In TikTok, that doesn't exist because it's not based on a similar social network graph.
And because of that one-to-one nature of a like on Facebook, right? It can only be limited. But if you're making them up and they're coming from anonymous, you actually can exceed the actual user count. I'm glad you said this because I was thinking this the other day as I was doing my dishes. I'm like, I wonder how much of the TikTok stuff is just phony.
Well, the thing is that the young folks are desperate and eager for attention and validation, and TikTok is giving them what they crave most of all. And
yeah, it's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
What do you want? You want likes? I'll give you likes.
Yeah, you got it. All how many likes you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that joke, right?
I was also going to say, well, obviously this is my own opinion, but I think eventually even advertisers, if those are not real human beings, will find out, because if you serve ads and nothing happens on the business side of the ads after the click, I guess you probably also
right, which might explain why they've been very slow to roll out a ad platform, knowing that
it's like the fake Instagram. And they buy the followers, you can see that the engagement is like not in line with the number of followers they have. They claim hundreds of thousands, but there's 50 likes and 3 comments.
Yep. So the next article is that Sequoia Capital, one of the world's leading VC tech investors, is forming the Sequoia Fund, which will hold all its U.S. and European investments, including stakes in public companies, because they get shares in companies when they invest in them. They were very early investors in a lot of the world's biggest companies like Apple and Oracle, on and on and on and on. And when you go to Sequoia's office, they have all of this certificates on their wall right behind the receptionist. And they are super, super, super crazy impressive. That is an amazing wall coverage of stock certificates that they have there. And many times when the company goes public, after they've invested in them, they keep their shares in that public company. So that's why people are confused. Why is Sequoia investing in publicly traded companies? They're not. They're investing in them before they're public. Then they IPO and they keep holding the shares. So that's why it says including their stakes in public companies. And the idea here, I have to say, is kind of genius. based on my limited, knowledge in this area. I'm by no means an expert on the financial, structure of companies and funds, but I think this idea is genius in that what it allows them to do is they create funds. They create different funds, one for AI, one for crypto, one for startups, one for minority entrepreneurs, etc. These funds take years to go through their cycles. There's usually a 7 to 10 year cycle for those funds to play themselves out, where the returns start coming. You invest now in 2020, 10 years later, the company IPOs, and now you're getting the liquidation event and the money comes back. And what they're saying is because they have multiple funds going on, there's always money coming in, but at different times. And the idea is let's take all of the returns, throw them back into a big pot in the middle, and then we can keep a big virtuous cycle going. So there's always money coming back in. It goes back into the pot. The pot creates more funds. And those funds eventually will spit back more money into the pot. And it's this virtual golden cycle. That's kind of a genius concept. I'm surprised other companies aren't doing the same. I'm surprised that this is such a novel idea. Roloff Botha, who's one of the senior partners there at Sequoia, who was in fact the investor in our startup at Mahalo, who was also the key investor at YouTube, which sold YouTube to Google. Roloff Botha took to Twitter to say, today is a crucible moment in Sequoia's journey. The traditional 10-year fund cycle of VC has become obsolete. Enter the Sequoia Fund. It removes all artificial time horizons on how long we can partner with companies. Brilliant. Love it. So now those funds are what are called evergreen funds. And that's a magic word in VC land. And there are evergreen funds, like, for example, IKEA has a VC team, and that VC team has endless funds because it's coming from their parent. Google Ventures is also a bit of an evergreen fund. It's just endless money coming from their parent, who just keeps funding the fund. So they always have money on hand. Traditional VC funds don't. They're set up. They get $100 million to spend. That's it. You're not getting more. And when you run out, you're done. And that's what Roloff's referring to about this artificial time horizon that funds typically have. And he mentions the 10-year life cycle that they traditionally have, because after 10 years, they run out of money. The money starts coming in through whatever liquidation events happen, either acquisitions or IPOs. And then that money gets returned to the parent. Well, let's just take the end of the water hose and put it back in the pot and let it refill. Take all of the hoses, put them back into the pot, and then the water comes back into the pot, and it just recycles endlessly. Now you've created a whole bunch of evergreen funds. It's brilliant.
Should we try the Beetlejuice thing? Cal, are you listening? Because he actually shared 45 minutes ago just this with another tent. If you look, it's an Axios article that Cal posted 45 minutes ago. Is it 3 times we need to see Beetlejuice to get him in? Cal? Oh,
he's summoning the demon. Yeah. He's calling Chucky. Cal, if you're listening, feel free to hop in. While we wait for Cal, potentially, the next one is that Robinhood has done their Q3 report. Revenue of $365 billion, up 35% year over year, which for a company of that, they're quite new. They're still quite young. You would expect 35% growth, honestly. And I would even expect a little more. But they've missed their estimate targets of 431 million by a lot due to less crypto trading, net loss of 1 billion. So stock is now down 8%. Yep, that's what happens if you don't meet your numbers. Next one, AMD, the chip manufacturer, also did their Q3 report, up 54% year over year. All the chip companies are going to have ridiculously strong results due to the chip shortages and whatnot. Bangalore-based neobank Zolve, so this is an India neobank, which aims to help immigrants in the U.S. access financial services, raises $40 million. And then here's the article I was talking about. Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy stop selling Chinese surveillance cameras from Lorix, Esviz. We already covered that one. but it's now part of the top 10 stories. The next one is a company called Medable, a developer for clinical trial management software, raises $300 million from Blackstone and Tiger Global at a $2 billion valuation. Medable. They make clinical trial management software. And here's why Tiger Global and Blackstone would be so interested in that. Because clinical trial management software, they're going to get a preview into data of all these clinical trials before they're even announced. That is asymmetric information, my friends. That's how you get the juicy, juicy, sweet, sweet data before anybody else knows it's happening in real time during the trial. Oh, this trial looks to be going very well. I wonder if we should go talk to that company because it looks like their new drug is going to cure cancer, according to this trial that's still underway that nobody knows about. The next one is Israeli-based Augury, which uses AI to monitor industrial medicine health, raises $180 million at a $1 billion valuation, using AI to monitor industrial machine health. Yep, we're going to need that. The next one, UserGems, whose AI-based data mapping tech helps companies identify prospective customers for B2B sales, raises $20 million. And the New York Magazine has a look at blockchain-based chat app Friends with Benefits, a decentralized autonomous organization, what's called colloquially as a DAO, D-A-O, decentralized autonomous organization, which is touted as one of the Web3's building blocks. So New York Magazine doing a deep dive on Friends with Benefits. And Andreessen Horowitz has already invested $5 million into this DAO, this group chat. But it's fully decentralized, so you cannot shut this down. No way, no how. Not really possible. Kind of like the Pirate Bay.
Not sure that's true, Tyler.
Yeah, we don't know. You're right. We don't know for a fact it's true. It depends on their philosophy of how they architected and engineered the platform.
Well, it's definitely not true today. It will not have achieved decentralization now, but you should always leave the door open that anything could in the future, but there's no way it's achieved that.
You're right. If it's built on Ethereum, it could be shut down.
Yeah, almost whatever it's built on, it can be shut down. It can't be built on Bitcoin. That's the Oracle problem. If it's built on Ethereum or any smaller blockchain, it can be shut down in a single swoop by the U.S. government or Amazon, or not necessarily Amazon, but by any large state player. So we should just be careful about throwing around decentralization. It doesn't come easy. We've made the internet, that's pretty decentralized, although it's got some scary central points in it. We've made the torrent.
I would argue it's very, very centralized. They have an annual meeting where they have to all share the keys of the domain endings.
We discussed, I think, yesterday. Yeah, exactly. So very little of what we've actually created as humankind is we just don't tend to make things decentralized. Right. Nature does. We don't. So I just think whenever we hear the word decentralized, it's easy to say. It's nearly impossible to achieve. And anything that claims to be decentralized today isn't. But you could leave the door open to, maybe it could become that. Yeah. So from a purely tracking...
There's another interesting element, which is that by organizing itself as a DAO, as a decentralized autonomous organization, it could be also interesting if they did it pseudonymously, where you don't know who's in charge, and which is similar to how that's actually how the Pirate Bay runs today, and that's why they can't shut it down. They can't shut the Pirate Bay down for a couple of reasons, but one is because they don't know who's running it. And so if you engineer your corporate structure in a way that's kind of anonymous, that in itself is a kind of interesting defense.
But, Andreessen Horowitz puts money into something.
Right.
But that legal entity is not a DAO.
It is.
It may be...
It is. They get coins in this DAO.
I understand, but it was registered probably in Delaware as a C Corp.
I believe it's not. I believe that it's not. Andreessen Horowitz
I don't believe there's a legal entity for DAO at the moment that
right.
could drive it and run it like a DAO.
Well, this
But
is my
not
point.
as
Is I
far
think
as the
Andreessen,
IRS is concerned.
correct. I think Andreessen Horowitz doesn't give a fuck, and they're like, "Oh, that's interesting. A fully non-legally compliant DAO. Here's $5 million. We're going to buy some of those coins and that thing, just like your crazy cousin does with Dogecoin."
All right.
Crazy cousin. I've got this image of a dude with
But they
crossed
wrote a
eyes.
check to someone. I mean, who did they write the check to?
No, they just buy it just like your cousin bought Dogecoin.
I see. That's how they invested.
So the next one is Twitter has done their Q3 report. Revenue of $1.28 billion, up 37% year over year. Monetized daily active users of 211 million, which is up 13% over the year, and says impact of Apple's data was less than expected, which is the juicy, sweet data that Facebook and others were using, primarily Facebook, but Twitter was also using that for their ad network. But it hasn't had that strong of an impact because not a whole lot of people are advertising on Twitter, to be frank. And yeah, so it's not impressive results, not terrible either, but I do recall the stock did go down a bit yesterday. As a shareholder, I noticed they didn't have a great day yesterday.
Did you say 1.28 billion for one quarter for Twitter?
Yes, revenue, yes.
Remember the lipstick guy?
Yes.
One day, 2 billion.
Yeah. So the next one is after 2019's breakup over customer data, MailChimp and Shopify strike a new deal. Oh, that could be super interesting. And MailChimp acquires ShopSync to integrate with Shopify. Very, very interesting. So now MailChimp, which has an obscene number of users, ostensibly your MailChimp your email newsletters can become e-commerce shops. You can start selling products through your email newsletters. That's Shopify's genius. Shopify, you're genius. I love you. And full transparency, I'm a shareholder. I'm even a voter. And
the island, the second, third, and fourth island,
Shopify is so incredibly brilliant to be partnering with all these people who have audiences like MailChimp. And they go to MailChimp and they're like, "Hey, MailChimp, how do you make money today?" You sell your platform as software as a service to a whole bunch of people. That's great. That's nice. What if you were also an e-commerce platform and you could start to monetize? You have millions of users. What if those millions of users were selling billions of products and you were getting a cut of that? Does that sound interesting to you? Would you like to have a meeting? Oh, you would. Okay, great. Here, we can make it very easy to implement into your platform. And bada boom, bada bing. Now Shopify is working with Spotify and MailChimp and TikTok and everybody. Facebook, Twitter, you got it. Boom, 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 boom. Shopify is what a genius move against Amazon. It's going to be amazing. Shopify is truly genius. Okay, next up is AdMix, which serves ads in games, esports, VR, and AR. Well, not yet. No one's run any ads in VR, AR yet that we're aware of. Raises a $25 million Series B, and that will be interesting. They're trying to build an ad network for VR and AR. That will be very interesting. No doubt Facebook wants to run its own ad network inside of Oculus. So the question is, where might this run? And the next one is from the New York Times. It says that the SEC, where Frances Haugen sent her documents, declined to say if it has opened an investigation into Facebook. As experts say, proving investor harm could be difficult. Exactly right. That turns out, essentially, what that headline tells you is that the New York Times, in their desperate jihad to attack their economic competitor Facebook, is now asking the SEC, hey, you got those documents from Frances Haugen, right? She sent you, the whistleblower from Facebook, she sent you the documents, right? All that crazy hot heat, right? All that smoke, she sent it over to you. You got it, right? And the SEC said, yeah, we got it. They're like, great, so what's going on? Are we going to kill Facebook or not? And they said, no, not really, because that would be very difficult because these documents are bullshit. They're dog shit. There's nothing new in these documents that she sent over. So we're not going to be able to do anything. And New York Times says, what? WTF? We've been telling everybody that the sky is falling. Yeah, you've made fake, just totally drummed up false paranoia over nothing. These documents that you found mean nothing. There's no new revelations in any of that shit. And now even the SEC is telling that to your face. Now you know that the New York Times is activist, jihadist, terrorists against Facebook. They have no interest in covering news on this issue. They are so insanely slanted that they're tarnishing the reputation of the New York Times. They're sacrificing decades, if not a century, of journalistic prizes. It's truly egregious. Next up, a company called Logic Broker, which offers cloud-based dropship software and is on track for $6 billion, raises $135 million. Who cares? Next one, Quintessential Labs, which improves data security by employing quantum random number generators, raises $25 million. And on that note, we read a headline yesterday. I'm surprised it's not still in the top headlines. That, oh, no, here it is. 2 headlines later. Yep, makes sense. Here it is. Amazon launches a center for quantum computing at Caltech in Pasadena, California. Caltech is one of the leading tech schools in the US, if not the world. And Amazon's jumping into the whole quantum computer race, which they need to do if they want to maintain themselves in the pantheon of big tech companies, joining the likes of China, IBM, Microsoft, Google, and other key rivals in the quantum computing race. And they're partnering with Caltech to do that. Another interesting headline is that from The Verge, that according to internal documents from Amazon, so Amazon's got a leaker, that they have it might be Amazon themselves. After you read this headline, you might understand that Amazon wants to leak this out actually themselves, which is very possible. They have something new called Project Mike, their own Clubhouse clone, a live audio app. And that's interesting that they're calling it a live audio app because that's what Spotify and Facebook both call their Clubhouse clones, live audio. And now Amazon's launching something called Project Mike, a live audio app that lets users host radio shows. But apparently it also enables music, which is very cool. As you know, we love to dabble in a little music here. Amazon is next in the list of companies getting into the live audio game. The company's building a new app called Project Mike, which gives anyone the ability to make and distribute a live radio show complete with music, according to a presentation viewed by The Verge. The project's big goal is to democratize and reinvent radio. The app will be focused on the US initially. And let's just see. Oh, the headline from The Verge is Amazon's building a Clubhouse competitor that will turn hosts into DJs. Yep. Kudos to The Verge for... Oh, and it's our friend Ashley over there at The Verge. Kudos to Ashley for recognizing that it's a Clubhouse clone. And the next one is a look at Facebook's lobbying operation, which spent $20 million last year as it struggles to hire and retain key Democratic staff with a top job open since January. So the Wall Street Journal, continuing with the jihad, they're not going to let this one go down. And now they've run out of documents, and now they're just reporting that a look at Facebook's lobbying operation, which I'm sure they're covering very, very fairly. I'm sure they're really employing really nice journalism to this story about Facebook and their lobbying. I'm sure it's completely, high journalistic integrity over there at the Wall Street Journal. I'm sure it's well worth my time to click and read that article because I'm sure that the Wall Street Journal is doing real classic, true, top-notch Pulitzer Prize winning journalism over there at Wall Street Journal. I'm totally confident now that everything coming out of the Wall Street Journal particularly about Facebook, is really top-notch Pulitzer Prize winning journalism over there, Wall Street Journal. You fucking ruined your company. You dumb fucks. You fucking sabotaged your entire brand. What the fuck were you thinking? So the next one is from where did it go? Oh, from the Financial Times. Somebody who hasn't yet totally thrown their reputation into the ocean. That they say they have sources that Amazon signs a contract with GCHQ, which is the UK's leading intelligence agency, and MI5 and MI6, which is like the FBI over there in the UK, to host top secret material in the UK. So that means Amazon's little sovereign cloud over there in the UK for their intelligence agencies, a deal that's estimated to be worth $1 billion over a decade. And last but not least, on the big headlines, also from the Financial Times, Stripe partners with Klarna to let retailers in the US, UK, and Europe more easily offer a buy now, pay later solution. This is genius. This is totally genius. So you have Stripe, which allows any website on the internet to easily do financial transactions and accept credit cards, etc., like Clubhouse, who, when they wanted to open a tip jar feature, which you can see on my profile, you can send me a little tip. Thank you very much. And if you do use that little tip jar, that's powered by Stripe, because Clubhouse didn't want to and shouldn't want to hire a whole team to build a little tip jar when they could go to Stripe in 30 minutes, get one line of code, plug it in, and bada bing, bada boom, they've got a tip jar. It's actually, the hard part is doing it securely, which Stripe does, because they're working on most of the internet at this point, and they do it very securely. Now, partnering with Klarna, which is a buy now, pay later service, which makes it very easy to do buy now, pay later. Now, if you're a Stripe-powered website like Clubhouse or the millions of other websites that use Stripe, partnering with Klarna to bring buy now, pay later to the millions and millions and millions of Stripe users' websites, like Clubhouse, like a lot of the top websites you go to, like most of the top websites you go to, use Stripe on the back end for their payments. Those websites will now be able to do buy now, pay later. That's genius. That's totally fucking genius. Holy shit, is that a genius partnership? So kudos to Klarna and Stripe on that genius partnership. So those are...
And Stripe and Shopify are tied up too, right?
Correct.
So now that means Klarna's coming to everywhere Shopify is at, if they choose to use Stripe.
Genius. Genius. Klarna and Shopify are genius. Okay, so those are the big boring headlines. Now we get into the tweets, which we've all been patiently waiting for, like this one that Joe Williams in the audience sends in. This one from Business Insider, which says they have an exclusive somehow that Clubhouse or Club Hoose, the Clubhouse, I've heard of this, has hired its first general counsel. And that's when you know a company's getting serious. They need a legal whiz because shit's getting real in the Clubhouse. That's when you bring in the big legal heavies, your general counsel. So Clubhouse has hired its first general counsel, who was a key early employee at Facebook named Anthony Falzone. Adds to a team of more than 80 employees at Clubhouse, which was founded early in the pandemic by a pair of serial entrepreneurs, yada yada. So now they got a legal boss. And Evan sends in the one that we already covered about U.S. retail giants pull Chinese surveillance from their shelves. Lakeisha shares this one that YouTube is now warning YouTube creators that it will start demonetizing low-quality kids videos if the content is low quality, encourages negative behavior or attitudes, or is heavily commercial, which, thank God, they're doing this, because the top earning creator on YouTube is for kids. And that has inspired a whole lot of copycats, because kids, when they watch YouTube, parents set them down with the phone and say, good luck with your digital babysitter. We'll see you in 5 hours. And that kid watches 5 hours of videos. And that's a very long session time. And so that's why a whole lot of people are getting into that game of making kids videos, because kids watch hours and hours and hours of videos. And if you can get them on the first video and then parlay it into, because YouTube they don't wait for the kid to press next. It's, they have 5 seconds to hit next. If they don't hit next, it goes to the next video. And if you have a channel full of videos, oh boy, you just got 100 of your videos watched as a digital babysitter from a 2-year-old who doesn't know what they're watching. So you can fill that page with utter shit content because you have a 2-year-old audience.
This is really dangerous. I mean, my boy, he's like, he gets really in a lot of trouble when he watches YouTube, not because of the content, but he gets into this selection mode where he just wants to pick stuff all the time, and you get this dopamine rush from, ooh, I want to pick that, and you start playing, and it's like, oh, I want to find something else. And this is like another big concern that parents need to be aware of is this dopamine that these kids can't handle when they're 2, 3 years old. It's like being high on cocaine and you're that young. So we really, really try our best to limit screen time. I admit, we let it go a bit during the pandemic, but I would see just crazy behavior from my kid. Not crazy, but markedly different behavior when he had the iPad and when he didn't. When he had the iPad and we took it away, he would be reeling for hours after. And we decided to just eliminate it from their life. Sorry to go on a tirade.
So the point is that a bunch of creators, thousands, are trying to address this very easy market. This is incredibly simple content to make, the easiest. You have a very undiscriminating user. And they watch 5-hour sessions. So, and you can run ads. The kids don't care. So you run tons of ads in shit, easy, cheap content, and they watch 5-hour sessions. Why would you not address that market? Well, thousands are. And they're making totally shit content. And YouTube knows it. So now YouTube's cracking down on it. So applause to YouTube for being a good actor in employing a bit of hygiene before the journalists start attacking you, which they should have been doing, because that's far worse than perhaps anything going on over in Facebook. So the next one is somebody who DM'd me this one. This is a juicy one. FBI raids Chinese POS system manufacturer called PAX Technology. This is from the past 24 hours. U.S. federal investigators today raided the offices of PAX Technology, a Chinese provider of point-of-sale devices used by millions of businesses and retailers globally. Oh, wow. Is it just me? Are we reading a lot about crackdowns on Chinese tech companies? Is it just me? Krebs on Security has learned the raid is tied to reports that PAX's systems may have been involved in cyber attacks on US and EU organizations. Oh, you mean they're weaponizing their Chinese technology that's, used in millions of American businesses? That juicy data that they then lock up in a cyber attack? Oh. Headquartered in Shenzhen, China, PAX Technology has more than 60 million point-of-sale terminals in use through 120 countries. Earlier today, Jacksonville, Florida-based WOKV.com, your local news network there in Jacksonville, Florida, reported that agents with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security had raided the local PAX Technology warehouse, and they have it on camera. You can actually watch the FBI walking into the facility. I'm looking at a photo right here. And it's of a video, and it says right on it, live video. In an official statement, investigators told WOKV in Florida only that they were executing a court-authorized search at the warehouse as part of a federal investigation, and that the inquiry included the Department of Customs and Border Protection and the Naval Criminal Investigative Services. The FBI has not responded to requests for comment because this is hot shit. That's why they can't comment.
You know what it is? Why would they get NCIS involved? That's naval, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they put these point of sale things on ships. And and if they're leaking data, they're also leaking geographic and locational positional information on aircraft on craft.
Yeah, it's not just crafts, it's also all the bases or all the places all over the world, Chris, where they
Exactly,
actually
because
have duty free and APO
these
boxes like
systems are
Guam and
very
stuff like that.
recognizable. The logo, you'll see the logo right on the front. It says PAX, and the point of sale system's recognizable. You know, there's ELO, there's PAX. Remember, I was Square before Square, so I kind of a point of sale nerd.
So it says several days ago, Krebs on Security heard from a trusted source that the FBI began investigating PAX after a major U.S. payment processor started asking questions about unusual network packets originating from the company's payment terminals. Hey, your little POS system, your little credit card swiper, why is it sending little strange packets of data to Beijing around 2 in the morning? What's going on? According to that source, the payment processor found that the PAX terminals were being used both as malware dropper, a repository of malicious files, and as command and control locations for staging attacks and collecting information. Oh. FBI and MI5 are conducting an intensive investigation into PAX, the source said. A major U.S. payment processor began asking questions about the network packets originating from PAX terminals and were not given any good answers. Krebs on Security reached out to PAX CEO on Sunday. The company has not yet responded to requests for comment. The source said two major financial providers, one in the United States and one in the United Kingdom, had already begun pulling PAX terminals from their payment infrastructure, a claim that was verified by two different sources. Here's the quote. My sources say that there is tech proof that there is tech proof of the way that the terminals were used in attack operations. The packet sizes don't match the payment data they should be sending, nor does it correlate with telemetry these devices might display if they were updating their software. PAX is now claiming that the investigation is racially and politically motivated. The source was unable to share specific details about the strange network activity and prompted the FBI's investigation, but it should be noted that the point of sale terminals and technology that supports them are perennial targets of cyber criminals. Oh.
The other thing is these point of sale systems are also used to do a lot of tax evasion and fraud. They're used to skim a lot. And sometimes these point of sale companies will sell you the package, but kind of like a sleazy cable guy, they'll tell you that they can promise you a certain level of skim, and then they program the skim into it. So this is another probably method they use.
It says right here
to get the skim in.
Right here in the next paragraph. It's not uncommon for payment terminals to be compromised remotely by malicious software and made to collect and transmit stolen information. Indeed, some of the history's largest cyber heists involved point-of-sale malware, including the 2008 breach at Heartland Payment Systems that exposed 100 million payment cards, just 100 million, and the 2013-2014 string of breaches at Target, Home Depot, and elsewhere that led to the theft of roughly another 100 million cards.
Tyler, what year was that in Target that you just said?
2013, 2014.
You know, this is a very unique story you bring up because having done a lot of freelance of implementations of SAP Retail with GKPOS, and SAP is a German company, they started doing a lot of the retail projects back in 2008 and 9 in Europe, in the Nordics, and because I was working up there, and then they started to move to North America to do it in Canada and start to migrate out the POS terminals in some of the stores and some of the chains to GKsoft, which was a German POS terminal that linked in with SAP. And clearly SAP has a stronger backbone in terms of its security, because that's the number one and number two are SAP in Germany and Oracle in the United States when it comes to backends holding data in the servers and stuff. But this is interesting because the timing that you said for Target, aligns with the timing when SAP started getting a lot of calls to get the software revamped at the supply chain level, connecting into the EDI terminal and the dockets that are going to the terminal to the cash register. And that's also around the same time that Microsoft Dynamics Retail had an influx of requests. So is it also the possibility that strategically some companies were already seeing it, but not saying it out loud and making the shift in their ICT on their own?
The Target breach was a breach of the HVAC systems where they had shared network access through the HVAC. So they planted spyware rootkits through the HVAC system that ultimately made its way down to the point of sale terminals.
So then it wasn't actually the terminal that sits on the counter that people
No,
are
it
paying.
was maybe I think it was maybe they got in and were just able to get into unencrypted traffic or something. I got to read the details, but I remember that it was unique in that they came in through the HVAC. They were like a third party vendor that had access, and then that's how they got in. Sorry.
Okay, next up.
Quick note, Tyler. Yeah, here in Sweden, I think you probably know, Tyler, that all the POS systems are sort of certified and they have the logo of the tax authority here.
Yes.
I'm kind of curiously thinking aloud because now we have a lot of newer technology from companies like iZettle.
Yep.
I suppose they have also been verified somehow. Just a quick note to sort of change this into another gear on at a personal level. If you want to see, I in my security efforts have installed an application level firewall on my computer to see what my computer is doing on a second by second basis, and installed this program called Little Snitch Network Monitor for those of you tech security focused people. And so I can see right now, as I look on this map of my computer, that there's probably about 45 connections going out from Sweden to all different parts of the world. And I'm probably running, 5 different programs right now. So my point is, whether it's a POS system or your own computer, unless you really look into this, these devices, our phones, our computers, are communicating to areas we have no idea about.
Okay. Okay, what's up next? Okay, next up. Billionaire Alibaba founder Jack Ma touring Dutch research institutes. Alibaba founder Jack Ma has been touring Dutch research institutions to pursue his interest in agriculture technology. According to South China Morning Post, the Chinese billionaire has largely been out of public view since he publicly criticized China's regulatory system in a speech last year. His empire promptly came under heavy scrutiny from regulators, and the $37 billion blockbuster IPO of his fintech affiliate Ant Group was suspended. Ma, once China's most famous outspoken entrepreneur, reappeared in Hong Kong in October, where he met at least a few business associates over meals. He then flew to the Spanish island of Majorca, where his luxury yacht is anchored, his first trip abroad since he fell out with Chinese regulators. 2 Spanish newspapers reported last week. South China Morning Post, owned by Alibaba, published 3 photos of Ma, sourced as handouts and dated October 25th. In 2 of them, he was seen wearing a white protective gown and holding flower pots, while in the 3rd, he was wearing jeans and a hoodie, and the caption said he was analyzing technology by aluminum extrusion specialists, BOAL. The billionaire, who retired as Alibaba's chairman, will continue touring European companies and research institutions involved in agricultural infrastructure and plant breeding, according to people familiar with his plans. Ma believed combining the technology he researched with Alibaba's cloud computing, big data analysis, and AI could help modernize Chinese agriculture. Well, China imports a lot of food. A lot. From Thailand. Hello from Thailand. And Myanmar, next door to Thailand. and Cambodia, also next door to Thailand. And we're facing massive supply chain issues and massive decoupling. Oh, by the way, Southeast Asia is known as ASEAN, ASEAN. It means it's all of the Southeast Asian countries all kind of work as a block. And all of the prime ministers are meeting right now. Guess who's also joining that meeting? Joe Biden. And guess what Joe Biden's going to tell the leaders of Southeast Asia? You're on Team USA. You can be on Team China or Team USA. This is what's happening around the globe at the moment, and Southeast Asia is going to play a very critical role in this because it's China's food supply. So what happens if China's food supply joins Team USA? Then Jack Ma, the biggest entrepreneur in Chinese history, is very interested in how to grow lots of food very quickly and is touring European companies who specialize in the latest innovations on how to grow food incredibly fucking fast. You heard it here first. Just a little tip. A little birdie told me. So let's go ahead and pull up the headline about Biden and ASEAN. Here it is. Biden joins U.S. ASEAN summit. Trump skipped after 2017. Biden to announce up to $102 million in funding for ASEAN. So Biden's coming to the party with a whole bunch of... He brought the chips and the beer and the pizza to the party, baby. What a nice guy. I wonder what he's got in mind. Biden joins ASEAN Summit, the annual big meeting of the Southeast Asian prime ministers.
That sounds like very little money, though.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Startup is raising more.
Yeah, that's a good point. Biden is set to participate.
How much?
He's giving $100 million. He says President Joe Biden on Tuesday, that was yesterday, will announce a $100 million initiative meant to beef up U.S. relationship with the Organization of Southeast Asian Nations, known as ASEAN, according to the White House. Biden is set to participate on Tuesday morning in a virtual summit with the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations, known as ASEAN. It marks the first time since 2017, when President Donald Trump participated in the summit, that the U.S. president will take part in the meeting of the bloc. So we didn't meet in 2018 or 19 or 2020, but we are meeting in 2021. And I wonder if you can figure out why. It comes as Biden is looking to strengthen the U.S. presence in the Pacific in the face of China's growth as a national security and economic adversary. The new funding will include money for health spending, a new climate initiative, programs to assist with the economic recovery caused by the coronavirus pandemic, and economic and education programs. And then what's interesting? Oh, there's a YouTube video of what he said in the meeting, and he says, "You can expect us to be there for you." Okay, so Uncle Joe's making a strong plea to get the Southeast Asian countries on Team USA and the ensuing escalation of the U.S.-China decoupling. So the next one is...
By the way,
yes.
China wants to join the CPTPP, right? And Japan is trying to encourage US to join first, but I'm not sure whether US is going to consider doing that, because if not, China will be overpowering.
That's a massive trade group, the Asian trade group. And
Tyler,
yes.
Didn't we see that the cost of COP26, the security, was like $250 million?
Yeah.
So if they actually did this meeting, it would probably cost more in security than the $100 million. So that's
they did it virtual anyway. So the next one is from Evan from CNBC, that the U.S. will require contact tracing and COVID tests when international visitor curbs lift next month. The restrictions were put in place first by the Trump administration in early 2020 and then extended by the Biden administration this year. The next one from Poppy. What this is from time.com. What the Facebook whistleblower did to Facebook's stock. Facebook's stock price has been diving since the Wall Street Journal first published initial reports from the whistleblower Frances Haugen. Yeah, the stock has gone down a bit, but so has tech generally. So you cannot make any causation that it's from the whistleblower, because it's likely would have gone down anyways, because all tech as a basket went down during that time. But of course, they want to say that it was because of the whistleblower. But if that was true, then you must ask yourself, the main event of the whistleblowing, the main event of the headlines was the dozens of headlines that came out in the coordinated attack on Monday, 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, where there was no less than 50 or 60 simultaneous headlines from more than a dozen publications, about 20. And on that day, Facebook stock went up. So your assumption here, Time, is a little bit flawed. And I bet you don't mention that it went up on Monday when everybody did the coordinated attack. I bet you don't mention that because you're not doing journalism, unfortunately. No, you don't. I just read the article, and that's a little peculiar that you don't mention that. It exposes your slant. So, tweeting that one out so you can see that for yourself. And the next one is from Adrian. No, where did we go? Here we go. Paul Tudor Jones picks Bitcoin over gold as his hedge against inflation. And this is a big, big debate here. The billionaire investor claims that Bitcoin is currently winning the race against gold. So, for those who don't know, that a lot of investors are talking about inflation at the moment. That's a huge conversation. And the question is what to do about it. Where to put, if you have a lot of money to put someplace, where do you put it in a moment of high inflation? Traditionally, you would put it in gold, of course, but now we've got this stuff called crypto. And the question is, do you put it in crypto? Because if the inflation gets really out of control, like really, really, really out of control, then you might start seeing theoretically, the value of the dollar would go down so much that people no longer trust it as a currency. I'm just giving historical context. This is what happened in Venezuela, for example, or more recently in, what is that? In Jordan? No, not Jordan, next door, just north of Israel. What's the... Lebanon, thank you. So Lebanon, the currency collapsed 90%. Venezuela, the currency collapsed perhaps even more than 90%. And the people don't trust the currency anymore. They don't use the currency anymore. They need to find new ways to deal. This has happened many times throughout history. So Bitcoin, if everyone starts putting their savings into Bitcoin, almost by a democratic vote, people have voted that Bitcoin is where they want to store value. And it's a really wild debate.
Arguably, this is happening in all Western countries to various degrees.
Yes.
In the U.S., there's an independent index called the Chapwood Index, and that shows estimated inflation. Actually, I should say that this Chapwood Index has stopped working for some reason, but it has shown inflation in the past by city around 12% annually. And this is a big raging debate but it depends on which country you're talking about. But I think it's true that inflation is much higher than what Western governments are letting us lead. Well, actually, all governments are leading us to believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Poppy shares this one from the New York Times that Hertz plans to order 100,000 Tesla vehicles, sending Tesla into the $1 trillion value club. And in India, Facebook grapples with an amplified version of its problems. That's the New York Times article we covered yesterday. Thank you, Poppy. And COVID cases are soaring in Britain again, according to Bloomberg. But it says why. The country's full-speed approach to lifting restrictions has certainly contributed to the spike in infections, but that's only part of the picture. Can someone from the UK give us a little cultural context, a little insider info on what's happening there? It says, once again, Britain has one of the highest rates of COVID infection anywhere. The UK just reported its biggest single-day COVID cases increase in 3 months.
They opened things up, a lot very fast. They took out a lot of the cautions and restrictions, and so that's pretty much what happened there.
Yeah, like nightclubs are opening up, Tyler, and that sort of thing. So yeah, and it's in comparison, Ireland are doing it differently, and there's the passports there, and like there's a bit of a debate around the whether you should have a vaccine passport to be able to eat and drink places, and there's the whole like culture wars over that.
It says that the climate may also affect how easily the virus is transmitted in Britain. Other endemic viruses that contribute to the common cold are highly seasonal. And so now that we're going into winter, they're quite concerned. And we should note that Russia and China are both, we're seeing reports of both Russia and China having all-time highs as well.
Singapore too.
Singapore, because they they've taken a new policy to live with it, although they're highly vaccinated. Russia is not vaccinated. They have one of the lowest vaccination rates in the world. Do you know why? I do. They don't trust their government. So they have a 30% vaccination rate.
Well, the vaccine might not work as well either.
You have that. Well, even of the 30% who have it, it isn't working as well either. China, most notably, has that problem because China's using Chinese vaccines, which we were the first to use in Thailand, Sinovac and Sinopharm. And we found out here in Thailand, and this was the biggest topic of conversation of the past, of the entire COVID, the biggest issue in all of Thailand, a country of 100 million people, is that these Chinese vaccines don't work. That was the conclusion. And in fact, the courts have made it illegal to buy more because they don't work. And China's using them because China doesn't have a choice politically, because it cannot bring itself to ask for help from the West and acknowledge that the West is actually superior on this issue, because they're telling their people that they are superior on this issue. Yet they're trying to buy a Canadian mRNA vaccine company because they desperately need it, and they know they need it.
So just for the nomenclature for the audience, these are all considered Delta plus variants, and I think they're referring to them as AY1, 2, and 4. And I don't know what they mean, but that's just the nomenclature I've seen out there. So,
okay, so next up, Poppy, who's from Australia, sends in this one about the BBC, which says Australia's Telstra, which is their biggest telecommunications company, it's kind of like the AT&T of Australia. Australia's Telstra buys Pacific firm to block China. The government and telecoms giant Telstra purchase a company called Digicel Pacific in a joint venture to block China's influence in the region, according to Telstra. And next up, we have Poppy with this one, also from the BBC. It says Facebook earns $9 billion of profits in the past 3 months, despite record-breaking profits, by the way, a notable increase in profits in the past 3 months during the whistleblower scandal. That's the headline. From BBC. Now notice how the BBC is having a very different take on this whole whistleblower scandal. It's saying that the whistleblower scandal, that Facebook had record profits during this whistleblower scandal. Notice how real journalism works. This BBC is still doing real journalism because they are not so economically dependent on ads, which Facebook is now
Yes, that's right.
kicking ass on. Do you see what's
They force us. The BBC forces us to pay this license fee, which is debatable. I like a lot of their stuff, and I think this is a good example of balanced journalism, Tyler.
right?
But yeah,
They're not attacking Facebook because they're not competing with Facebook for ads. And now you know why. The BBC is actually doing real journalism, and the ad-based ones like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and Time and all those sour, salty losers are all attacking their economic opponent in their journalistic jihad against Facebook. And the BBC stands up and says, we're not dependent on ads. We get funded by the government and the taxpayers and whatever more directly, so we can write real headlines like Facebook earns record-breaking profits despite whistleblower scandal. The firm posts strong profits as it continues to face negative press over leaked internal documents. And you can hear the BBC laughing at the New York Times. Because meanwhile, in the West, we just read the headline about how the whistleblower is causing such tremendous pressure on Facebook. We just read that headline 3 headlines ago from the U.S., from an ad-based publication.
I mean, from a SharePoint perspective, Tyler, it has taken quite a dent. But from a profitability, so I don't know. I don't know if the other article was as precise as to outline how particular they'd been affected.
We covered this. The tech sector was going down during the same time. The stocks will operate in a very flock-like mentality. I'm speaking as somebody who's been trading since 2000. So when you have the tech sector, a big movement of Amazon, Google, Facebook will influence the other birds in that flock. So if the tech sector is going down, Facebook will also go down as a bird in that flock. So the fact that the sector went down during Facebook's whistleblower means that, of course, Facebook was going down. So we can't conclude that Facebook going down was a result of the whistleblower. And there's whatever little evidence we have points to the contrary, because the day of the most coordinated attack of dozens of hot headlines sabotaging Facebook stock went up. On D-Day, when the journalists stormed the beach.
Correlation does not always equal causation.
Right. So, what can we say? Next one is from who? Who do we got? What's this one? Where did it go? Oh, here we go. Snapchat hits 100 million monthly users in India. Vinay, you sent this one in. Is it getting popular over there in India? Plans to double.
Oh yeah.
I love the next part of the best part of the headline I didn't even read. It says Snapchat hits 100 million monthly users in India and plans to double down on what? Oh, what? Hold on. Let's do our favorite game show here. Let's go ahead and do this. Where's Messi? Snapchat hits 100 million monthly users in India and plans to double down on what? Vinay, you're disqualified. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm going to say data. It's a bit. Well, anyway.
You're out.
There's an answer.
You're out. Who's up?
Hiring?
Not a bad guess. Messi, what is Snapchat doubling down on in India?
She's not here.
Oh, she's not here today. She was here a bit ago.
Yep.
Cheryl, you want to take a guess? What is Snapchat now going to double down on in India?
Mention.
Social commerce.
Oh, Lakeisha wins with social commerce.
Wow. Okay.
Look at the big brain on
Massage
on
helps.
Lakeisha.
A grade Lakeisha comes in with the answer.
It was
The
that
massage
2 hour.
helped.
It was that 2 hour Thai massage with oil.
Yeah.
So Snapchat's getting into the social commerce game in India, where it's already underway. Thank you for Vinay. You were going to comment about Snapchat.
Yeah, they're growing really big. I mean, that's 100 million monthly users in India, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to go much faster. I think they'll be at 200 million a year from now. That's like
So
crazy number.
Vinay, is there a risk of Snapchat being shut down and then some Indian version popping up?
They've actually localized quite a bit. I mean, they have. It's
They're playing ball.
yeah, they're not bringing US centric content. They're bringing local content. They've created local creator communities. So as far as most of the Indians are concerned, Snapchat's local.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And by the way, Tyler, I also tweeted an IPO that's coming up. Paytm's IPO is going 2.6 billion, and SoftBank and Ant are going to make a lot of money from that one.
Okay. What else do we got?
Vinay, I got. I think Monica actually commented that they are losing users. Is that true?
Which one? Snapchat?
PTM.
Paytm, yeah, because it's got very, very competitive. I mean, there's so many out there now. Google Play, Snapchat, MobiQuick. I mean, there's about 6 or 7 payment gateways right now. So Paytm's flat. I mean, they probably lost a little bit market share because you also have others coming in.
Hey, Tyler.
Yes.
I have a proposed topic indirectly related to tech, and that is this U.S. proposal to tax unrealized capital gains, which would affect a lot of tech billionaires.
Janet Yellen, yeah.
I'm curious to know. I mean, some of these people, I think it's Ken who's in New York, what their opinions, if this is actually going to pass.
Great question.
Right now, I think that if anything passes, and that's if, that may be the more favorite tax proposal, because Senator Sinema has objected to other mechanisms and raising taxes more broadly, and they want to have some sort of revenue source to pay for this. Supposedly, I don't think they're going to be able to pass it with no taxes. But I'm no matter what you're seeing in the paper, I'm still of the belief they may not have the votes to do anything. I think the Democratic Party is kind of split. Congresswoman Jayapal from Washington, I think she's from Washington State, who was like the head of the House Progressives for this purpose, is saying that she won't even accept some sort of concept of an agreed framework on the larger bill before they will vote in favor of the main infrastructure bill that's already passed the Senate. So the main infrastructure bill, which is the so-called smaller bill that pays for traditional infrastructure, has already passed the Senate. It's sitting in the House. It actually was quote unquote bipartisan, meaning at least 14 Republicans in the Senate, including Mitch McConnell, actually voted for it. And other than Kevin McCarthy now squeezing his own members in the House, there would have been some Republican members that would have voted for it in the House as well. But now McCarthy's basically, his political calculus, which I think is wrong, is to keep every Republican from voting for the whatever I call the small bill or the traditional infrastructure bill. So the only way they can pass that now is to get like every Democrat to vote for it. And the progressives are saying we won't vote for that unless you vote for also the larger bill, which has a lot of what they call social infrastructure. But it looks to me that they're not going to be able to put it together in time and get the votes. And so the proposal you're talking about supposedly will impact maybe 1,000 billionaires. Um, but I mean, even the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee has expressed reservations about this. He says, "Look, we've never done this before. We haven't even had a hearing on it. Okay, we have no idea what revenue it may raise or whatever implications it may have, and so you have some people who are just legitimately, even in the Democratic side, not that they're against taxing billionaires, but they just don't know what it does. I mean, it's just like being shoved in so they can say they have a revenue source to pay for the bill, because it's become a very political thing about just get it through somehow any which way to say that there's a win. So my own guess is nothing passes, but if something were to pass, I think that's going to be in the bill, because I don't see another tax measure that they're going to get the votes for. And I don't know, hopefully that answers uh, your question. And they're not sure how they're going to structure that, by the way. And they're not even sure about this issue, by the way, is if they're going to tax unrealized capital gains, what happens if there's a downturn in the market? Okay, and
Great
you've
point.
been paying, right, all these, you've been paying these increments. Are they going to have to issue a refund? And the thought process and the politics of having to issue big, refund checks now to Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos is very unappealing to some of even the Democrats. So they do not know. There's no uniform agreement on this yet. So that's yeah, but yeah, and I'll just leave it there. I know this is there's something similar, and there's some people on stage who know more than I do about it. Some sort of similar type of tax in Sweden, but I don't think it's as onerous as this.
A good explanation. Thanks for. I didn't think about the downturn, but I mean, it's a slippery slope. If you start taxing unrealized gains, the government is going to have an incentive to continue with inflation, printing money, because they want the market to go up so that revenue can keep increasing. So I think it's a really slippery slope.
What's also
Yeah,
if
well,
the whole idea of, would you then also be able to claim unrealized losses? That's the stupid,
well,
flip
yeah.
side.
So part of the suggestion now is that rather than maybe issue them a refund check, is that to have a loss carry forward, so that like if you have unrealized losses, you could bring them forward, and that would lower your tax when you have a gain. So that's one of the suggestions, but they haven't even written the language of this bill yet. So. But I think one of the other suggestions was something. I think I only looked at it. I looked at the Sweden thing once, and I think it was like they basically assume you're earning 4%. So it's not so much what the stocks actually do, right? It's like you have to pay 4%, like a 4% tax on your whatever your assets are or something. Uh, Maybe I'm wrong about that. Which is a little
Can,
bit maybe
There, there
smart.
is there is no wealth tax here,
can,
and there's no tax on unrealized gains either.
Really?
Ken, I'm fascinated in how your casino
Not Sweden.
knowledge
I mean
seems.
the Netherlands. By the way, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm fascinated in how your casino knowledge really ties in here. How does the W2G really mix in here? Because, with casinos, you can claim your losses, but only up to what, your gains?
That's correct. And by the way, you have to itemize too. So unless you itemize, then you don't get that. Let's say it doesn't make any sense for you to itemize. I mean, that's usually for the lower income people. But I mean, it's like a pain for like some senior citizen who hits a $1,200 or $1,500 jackpot, and they don't have to itemize on their taxes generally, because their standard deduction is more than the itemization. They don't get to deduct. They can't even deduct those losses against their $1,500 win. But yeah, you're right. You can only deduct, if you can deduct, you can only deduct up to your win, and you cannot carry forward losses. I think if you're a professional gambler and you file Schedule C, unless, I mean, I haven't looked at the rules recently, then you might be able to carry forward, but maybe not actually. I don't even think you could do it then. But I'm not sure anymore, because I haven't looked at it in a while. So don't take my tax advice on this, because I haven't looked at it in a few years.
Okay. So we've got a whole bunch of more headlines to run through here. Starting with this one here from Sudamini, sends in this one from CNN, that Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin wants to build a tourism space station called Orbital Reef, a massive new commercial space station, nearly as big as the International Space Station. And there was some really interesting wording in this press release where they announced this. I don't see it in the CNN article, but the other article we read mentioned the phrase exotic hospitality. Anyway, so he wants to build a big space station. Well, first he has to get to space. That's kind of the problem there, Jeff. You still really got to get into actual space for a space station. Anyway, the next one is from Sudamini from Hindustan Times, that India to lift quarantine requirement for international travelers starting today, which means I can go to India, everybody. Fuck yeah. Love it. So,
Welcome.
been waiting for this one. And the global trajectory of COVID continues to decline with certain regional variations. And now they're dropping the quarantine. That's fantastic. So the next one is...
Yeah, so when are you coming to Bangalore, Tyler? We got to get the meeting set up.
I know, right? I already have my flights to and from Sweden, unfortunately, or I would do it on the way there or back. And I can't do it on the way back. And I can't really do it on the way there. So we'll have to figure that out. The next one is that NASA, speaking of space, NASA discovers first possible planet outside of Milky Way galaxy. The exoplanet, which is roughly the size of Saturn, has been detected more than 28 million light years away from Earth. The discovery has been hailed as a breakthrough in the hunt for distant planets. Scientists believe they've discovered the first known planet outside our galaxy, thousands of times farther than any other exoplanet previously found in the Milky Way. Okay, so we have much closer backups within our own galaxy, the Milky Way. So the next one is from Hindustan Times, that Google apps banned the first full list of 150 sickening apps booted from Google Play Store. Google, shocking as it may seem, over 10 million users were probably affected by these SMS scam apps. These 150 dangerous apps were duping users and were banned by the Google Play Store. Google has banned another 150 dangerous apps from its app store called the Google Play Store. These 150 malicious SMS scam apps on the Play Store were part of a campaign called Ultima SMS, wherein malicious actors sign victims up for expensive premium SMS services that earn them money, while ultimately leaving victims facing big losses. And now Google's banned 150 of these apps. So kudos to Google for that. Next up, Donald Trump loses bid to keep Twitter lawsuit in Florida. The case between Donald Trump against Twitter will now move to California after a judge finds that Trump wasn't exempt from terms of service clause because he was the sitting president. So Twitter has a terms of service. They have a little button that says, I accept. And if you click that button, you accept their terms of service. Even if you're the president of the United States, you are still held by that contract that you agreed to. Presidents are not exempt from terms of service contracts that they agree to, is what this court just ruled. So, because the terms of service says, no doubt, I haven't even read the article, I don't need to, because that terms of service is going to say that if you click agree, then you also agree that any dispute will be settled in California, where Twitter is based. Because if Twitter doesn't include that phrase in their terms of service, then anyone can sue them anywhere in the world, and Twitter's lawyers will have to be spread all over the fucking planet. Which is why I know they included the phrase that any disputes must be settled in California in the terms of service, which Donald Trump agreed to. And Donald was trying to say, no, I want to do this in Florida where I'm friends with the judge. Because I have Mar-a-Lago, and he's probably spends a little time at Mar-a-Lago. And it was decided, no. Even presidents who agree to terms of service are held to the terms of service they agree to. So the court case must move to California. And now you're going to lose that court case because you're not friends with the judge. Former President Donald Trump's legal effort to get his Twitter account reinstated was dealt a setback on Tuesday when a federal judge ruled his lawsuit should be moved from Florida to California. Trump was banned from Twitter in January after a mob of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol building in a riot that left several people dead, including Capitol Police officer. Twitter said the ban was due to the risk of further incitements of violence. Trump sued over the Twitter ban. Judge Robert Scola Jr. for the Southern District of Florida on Tuesday granted Twitter's motion to move Trump's lawsuit, rejecting the former president's argument that he's exempt from Twitter's terms of service because he was the sitting president when his account was suspended and legally unable to accept a forum selection clause. That clause, which all users agree to in order to use Twitter, specifies the Northern District Court of California as the venue for resolving legal disputes involving the platform. And now you know why. Even assuming that
Dear Donald, nice try. Sorry, no, yours sincerely. Please.
Even assuming that Trump was using his account in his official capacity, Trump has not advanced any legal authority to support his contention that he satisfies the second requirement of the exemption, that he is legally unable to accept the controlling law, jurisdiction, or venue clauses. Scola wrote in his ruling, agreeing with Twitter's argument that the clause is mandatory. Okay, next up is this one from Sudamini from CNET, that Google and IBM are underreporting greenhouse gas emissions, and they're just 2 of 56 tech companies researchers say have underreported their carbon footprints. Google and IBM among 56 top tech companies that failed to disclose all of their greenhouse gas emissions, according to a new published research. In a case study of the tech sector, we find that corporate reports omit half of the total emissions. The study found on average among 56 companies. Researchers at Technical University of Munich analyzed the type of emissions known as Scope 3. According to the study published late last week in the journal Nature Communications, they found, for example, that Google parent company Alphabet reported emissions consistently, but failed to include certain emissions in those reports. IBM found to have issued inconsistent reports on its carbon footprint, excluding certain types of emissions and reporting different emissions to different audiences. BB has the next one from South China Morning Post. Headline reads, "Can Superman Li Ka-shing save the planet with edible plastic?" Lee's Horizon Ventures says its investments in sustainability projects from edible plastic to animal-free leather can soon be scaled up to production levels to make real impact. Let's hope so. Edible plastic sounds fantastic.
Edible plastic?
Yeah.
You want to eat it?
Sure. It's made out of biomaterial. It's not made out of petroleum-based material. So Netflix is the subject of the next article. It says Netflix scrambled internally to suppress a controversial movie from search results. That sounds a little salacious. The streaming giant kept Cuties from appearing in some search results and recommendations after a backlash to Netflix. In September 20, this is according to The Verge. It says
I remember this. I remember this controversy. It was it depicted very young women in provocative situations, like in a pageant type format or something like that.
Okay, it says in September 2020, Netflix was in turmoil as the company battled its most significant PR scandal to date. Earlier that year, the streaming platform had acquired the worldwide rights to the French film Cuties after its lauded premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. I can see where this is going. Because film festivals and French films actually contain this crazy stuff called nudity. And by the way, dear Americans, if you should find yourself in Scandinavia during the summer, you will find yourself walking through public parks of nude people or partially nude people in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon on people on their lunch breaks. Because in the springtime when the sun returns to Scandinavia, you are allowed to soak up people will lie down flat in a park, take off their business attire and shoes in the middle of a park, down to their underwear, and sometimes more, in the middle of a park, and lay out flat like they are absorbing rays from holy sweet Jesus himself.
Give me that vitamin D.
They have been vitamin D starved, and basically Europe did not inherit the puritanical silliness that the Americans did. So, yes, France and Scandinavia and Germany and the most of Europe doesn't have a problem with this stuff, but oh boy, do Americans have a problem with this stuff. America, you are unique little snowflakes, okay? So, I've not even seen the movie. I'm not making a comment about the movie, but if it's a popular French film that gets a lot of attention and praise at the Sundance Film Festival, which is an American film festival in Sundance, which is what, Idaho? One of America's biggest film festivals. And then it goes on Netflix, understandably, because it's a highly prized film at Sundance. And then people, Americans start taking offense to what is called the hypersexualization of the young girls. And it says Netflix released to promote it didn't have the same self-awareness. Instead, it displayed the actors, some of whom are 12 years old, in booty shorts and crop tops, striking provocative dance poses. The fallout was immediate. Cancel Netflix started trending on Twitter. QAnon conspiracy theorists claimed that the company was distributing child porn and started tweeting about it with the hashtag #SaveTheChildren. Texas House of Representative members Matt Schaefer asked Attorney General Ken Paxton to investigate the film for possible violations of child exploitation and child pornography laws. Netflix apologized for the poster but stood by the film. After all, the frenzied response was to the marketing, not the movie itself. So the response was to the poster of the movie. Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos called the director to personally own up to the mistake. And behind the scenes, however, Netflix scrambled to minimize public backlash by suppressing the film in search results prior to its release. It removed Cuties from the coming soon and popular searches category and excluded it for queries for cute. It then adjusted its algorithm so searches for the film would not surface streamy sexual titles or kids' movies. Sounds like a huge scandal. They had to adjust their algorithm. Holy sweet Jesus, they removed a title from the coming soon and popular searches. What a scandal. As the first sentence says, Netflix was in turmoil. Absolute chaos, absolute madness. They had to move this title out of the coming soon section of Netflix. Utter turmoil, utter madness, absolute chaos happening over at Netflix. Nice try, Verge. Again, you're turning yourself into a worthless rag.
What's the angle here?
People are watching a lot of Netflix and not reading The Verge. and Netflix isn't advertising on The Verge. And they want to get Netflix's CEO to appear at their next year's annual event so that they don't write further hit pieces about them. We have an annual event. Why don't you come speak at our event? And if you come speak at our event, maybe we'll stop writing hit pieces about you.
It's turned into a mafia tactics.
Silly shit going on over there at The Verge, y'all. Nile, what the fuck have you guys done to your once good publication? Next up is from Sundamini that Huawei is planning to launch their electric vehicle with their own Harmony OS operating system because they're legally not allowed to use Google Android. So they're launching a Harmony OS powered electric vehicle. Huawei's getting into the EV cars, y'all, because they got to do something. Because their business, you want to talk about a business that's really dying? You want to talk about Huawei. And they need to pivot quickly, so they're pivoting into EVs. And those cars will not be allowed in the US. And then the next one's from BB, that Photoshop's new NFT button could prove you're the digital artist. That's fantastic. That's genius. That's amazing.
I think that's very important in the future.
Adobe is looking to fight NFT art theft with content credentials. This is genius. So now you can put your Photoshop creations on the blockchain as NFTs. You can mint NFTs directly from Photoshop, and they could tie it right back to the app. This is genius. That's absolutely brilliant. Next up, Cisco wants to make virtual meetings more immersive with real-time holograms of actual people, just like sci-fi movies. And for those who don't know, many do, Cisco is the biggest player in telepresence meetings, where they sell a truly remarkable telepresence experience where you can have virtual meetings that feel like actual real meetings. It's very, very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you sit down at a table, like a boardroom table, and sitting across from you are 3 very large screens with very high fidelity that have very thin borders. So it looks like one massive real screen, and you see people sitting across from you at this table, and they have very life-size appearance, and they're looking right in your eyes, and you feel like you're in a meeting with them. They've had this for over a decade. It's very expensive, but all the top companies have it. I've been in such meetings, and it's fucking amazing and very expensive. But Cisco, the headline now is that Cisco wants to make virtual meetings more immersive with real-time holograms. And they have all the customers who are willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for that technology because they're already
And Tyler, they also own WebEx, right? So they're bringing some of those features of high fidelity video into WebEx as well, which is going to give Zoom and some of the others a run for their money.
The next one is that Sundar Pichai, Google CEO, confirms the new JioPhone launch timeline. And the JioPhone is big news for tech companies, all tech companies. Why would one phone be big news for all tech companies? Because this is no ordinary phone, y'all. This is a $25, very beautiful Android phone for the Indian market. And this will open the door for another 200 million internet users in India who don't previously have a miraculously good $25 Android smartphone. And so another 200 million internet users in India, that's about the size of America's internet users, is very good news for tech companies everywhere. And especially in India, and especially for the Indian unicorns. So watch out. India is on fire, y'all. And now you know why I'm trying to reschedule my plans to get to India. The next one is China tech stocks slide as tensions with U.S. rise. Yes, Because you just heard headlines in this room today that America's cracking down on the POS systems, Chinese POS systems, and Chinese cameras. We read both those headlines today. Because America's figured out that China has weaponized their technology companies to collect data and video and audio and allow for hackings in their POS systems, yada, yada, etc., etc. And now you know why the Senate subcommittee asked TikTok, are you building dossiers on the American users? Because they are. And we know they are because the FBI has figured out that China is using all the Chinese tech companies that are doing business in the US to their own purposes by weaponizing all of those companies. And that's why America's cracking down on those tech companies. And that's why Chinese tech stocks are sliding as tensions with the US rise again, according to this headline from Singapore. Chinese tech stocks dropped on Wednesday as US-Chinese tensions flare up again. Yep. If you're a Chinese company doing business in the US, that stock's going to go down quickly. The next one's from NDTV. Elon Musk reveals the real reason why he supports Dogecoin. Musk revealed that many of his people on the production lines at Tesla or building rockets at SpaceX own Dogecoin. Next up, Oculus Quest Pro leaks ahead of Facebook Connect event, which happened to be tomorrow. Facebook's going to do a big annual event for their VR company Oculus called Connect. We will watch it together here in this room, and there's already leaks before the event. Facebook is said to be developing a pro version of the Oculus Quest, and now a series of what could be videos for unreleased products have leaked. It looks like the new Oculus virtual reality headset could be announced tomorrow. Facebook is said to be developing a pro version. The videos were first spotted on Reddit as part of a report by The Verge. As per the videos, the unreleased dark-colored headset is being used to personalize virtual avatars. So it looks like we're going to get a pro version announcement tomorrow. So we'll look forward to that. The next one's from Cheryl from Nikkei Japan about a Tokyo-based startup has developed a flying motorbike that it says can zip along at 100 kilometers per hour and comes with a $682,000 price tag. So if you've got $682,000 burning a hole in your pocket, you could buy an NFT, or you could buy one of these flying motorcycles that goes 100 kilometers per hour, about 62 miles per hour.
The Swedish version is cheaper.
The Swedish version's about $100,000, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
And it may be safer because this is a motorcycle. That means you expose your body more.
They look like they would be quite similar in terms of safety. It's just how your body's positioned on it. In the Swedish one, you recline. In the Japanese version, it looks like you're riding a motorbike. So it depends on how you think you'd have better balance.
Oh, but if it rains, I mean.
Hey, do you think this one can land on sea and become a jet ski?
No. This one cannot, no.
Cannot,
no.
Okay.
The next one is from CNN that electric robots are mapping the seafloor, Earth's final frontier. Sea Trek and Bedrock Ocean Exploration are two startups taking electric robots to new depths in an attempt to map the ocean floor. And Cal Patel sends in this one from CNBC that Google's search rival called Ecosia launches a $405 million VC fund to back climate tech founders. The so-called World Fund will invest in the next generation of founders looking to tackle climate change. The next one is from Sundamini. The headline reads, Iran says cyber attack closes gas stations across Iran. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, though it bore similarities to another months earlier, and I think I know who might have done the attack. Let me see if I can find a related headline that it can help fill you in on who might be behind these attacks, on this particular attack of Iran's gas stations. Here's a hint. Here's a separate headline. No connection at all. This headline is totally in no way, absolutely not related whatsoever, not even a little bit. Times of Israel. It says that the Israeli Air Force to start training for strike on Iran nuke program in coming months. Some parts of attack plans for Tehran's nuclear sites will be viable shortly. Others could take over. This is from yesterday. This headline's less than 24 hours old. In fact, it's from today. The headline's dated today. That the Israeli Air Force is now started training to strike the Iran nuclear program. They think Iran is developing nuclear weapons. They're using their Air Force. They're starting the training to strike the Iran nuclear program where they think the nuclear bombs are being developed. They're now publicly stating it in the Times of Israel. They're letting the world know we're going to bomb Iran with our Air Force where their nuclear developments are currently occurring because we believe they're building nuclear weapons. The Israeli Air Force will begin practicing for a strike on Iran's nuclear program, having set aside funding and updated its training schedule for the mission. The Times of Israel has learned, in light of growing uncertainty regarding a return by Iran to the 2015 nuclear deal known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, amid long-standing negotiations with the U.S., the Israel Defense Forces in recent months has ramped up its efforts to prepare a credibly military threat against Tehran's nuclear facilities. Now, if you joined us yesterday, you'll recall that I said a very clever thing that cyber hackers are going to do is preemptively attack your energy supply chain before they do hot war. Chris, Cheryl, you recall my prediction about this? That what you could do is attack them, do a cyber attack against their energy infrastructure because their military is dependent on gasoline and oil and whatnot. So if you were going to intend to do hot war with somebody, you would, about a month before, as I said yesterday, did I not say about a month before? You would start attacking their energy infrastructure through cyber attacks. I said this yesterday, before this headline came out that from the Times of Israel, that
Yeah, but tell us from what I've been reading, these gas stations are going to be back online within a week, apparently. So I don't know if
so
it's
you
that.
believe Iran when they say they're going to bring their gas stations online, Ken?
I don't. I'm just reading in the papers.
Right.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Okay.
don't think it's
Sure.
government.
Sure. Iran says they're going to bring their gas stations back online.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure the people of Iran are going to stop protesting now that the state has said they're going to turn the pipes back on.
Well, once they turn them back on, but they have to get them on, otherwise people don't have gas. So
Right.
People
are already starting to protest. I'm pretty sure Iran's under a little bit of pressure to claim that they're going to get it figured out.
And you do also know that the Iranians attacked American troops near Syria, so there's some suspicion it could be the United States as well,
Correct.
and even some suspicion. I don't know if they have the capability, but there's some suspicion that there's anti-Khomeini forces within Iran that did this to stir trouble with the government there.
Iran
So
is reportedly claiming they believe that the gasoline station hack is either the U.S. or Israel.
I assume they'll never say it's internal, but more international reports have said it might be internal. Obviously, United States and Israel are the most likely. This is where it is. So.
Sure, you're all very intelligent individuals. You can make your own assessments on who you think is attacking Iran's gas stations.
And I'm not really sure, by the way, that Israel's actually going to bomb them. I think what they're doing, by the way, with that thing in that to go public in advance, is they're trying to put pressure on the Biden administration to not push forward on what they're trying to do to get back into the Iranian nuclear deal. Basically, telling Biden, if you do that, then we're going to have to go to war with Iran.
Oh, check this out! I have to take a
That's
screenshot of this. The story that I just read from the Times of Israel. When I go to the website, you have to see a screenshot of this. You won't believe it. I'm reading a story from the Times of Israel. If you go to the timesofisrael.com, timesofisrael.com, and pick any story, doesn't matter what story, you'll be reading a story. On the left side of the website, they have the top stories. Guess what this big special section on the left of the top story is in the Times of Israel? Here it is. I'll read it to you. Iran blames fuel shutdown on cyber attack from unnamed country. Is the biggest story in the Times of Israel. An Iranian official blamed a cyber attack that crippled gas stations across the country Tuesday on a foreign country, as authorities said the issue was being resolved and fuel distribution was resuming nationwide. The attack blocked the IT system that allowed Iranians to fill their tanks for free or at subsidized prices with a digital card issued by authorities, leading to long lines and frustrations as motorists became stranded without fuel. A senior Iranian official said Wednesday that the cyber attack affected all of the Islamic Republic's 4,300 gas stations, but according to the state-run news agency, 80% of Iran's gas stations had begun selling fuel again by Wednesday morning, by cash, I assume. A top official in Iran's Supreme Council of Cyberspace told state broadcaster that the attack had apparently been carried out by a foreign country, though it was too early to name suspects. He also linked the attack to another one. I read the article where they specifically named Israel or the United States. He also linked the attack to another one that targeted Iran's rail system in July. In comments reported to the state agency, there is the possibility that the attack, like a previous one on the railway system, has been conducted from abroad. Yeah, who's targeting the railway system? Again, supply chain, critical infrastructure supply chain, and the gas stations. Again, critical infrastructure supply chains. And why is the Times of Israel listing this as the biggest story on their website? Saying that it's unnamed when in fact it is named. They named Israel.
Tyler, no mention in the Tehran Times, English International Daily.
Nobody in America is covering this because America has no interest in doing cyber attacks. I can't say no interest. They could. It's possible. It's potentially possible. It just so happens that in the past 48 hours, Israel is now preparing to bomb Iran because they believe they now have nuclear weapons. This is Israel's worst nightmare, that Iran has a nuclear weapon.
But Tyler, do you really believe Israel is going to if they were really intending to bomb Iran, they would give it advance notice?
Yeah, yes, because they don't. If they did it without noticing the world, they would come under incredible shitstorm.
They're going to come under a shitstorm either way, so it doesn't really
They
matter.
already announced it, and they haven't come under a shitstorm for announcing it.
Because I don't think a lot of people have been paying attention to this news you just read. I mean, if they actually attack, I think a lot of the world just looks at that as hyperbole, kind of like what North Korea does all the time.
Okay,
but
Ken, if Iran does have a nuclear bomb, do you think Israel's not going to try and stop that?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, and how do you think they'll stop it?
Well,
they will bomb them. They will bomb them.
Oh, so now you're saying they are going to bomb them?
No.
But they've been doing all this covert stuff. The last one that I remember was a automatic machine gun that gunned down the scientist.
Right. They tried to kill the people who were making the bombs.
Problem, Tyler, as I understand it, I'm not an expert in this, is that where Iran is building this stuff is in really hardened, whether they're silos or whatever, that it may not be that easy to bomb it. Okay, so I mean, I don't know if that's
Well, I have a
changed.
little more information for you, Ken, if you're interested.
Okay, sure.
They've asked the U.S. for one of our bunker busting bombs. Precisely as you just said, because they're intentionally keeping the missile that Israel now believes they have in a bunker. And Israel doesn't have a bunker busting bomb that can break through the bunker. The U.S. does. And they've asked us to buy one from us. And we've said, let's think about that. Now, why would they be asking us to buy a bomb they don't intend to use?
That's a good. No, I believe they probably want to get one. Now, the question you need to ask is: Biden going to sell them a bunker busting bomb when he's trying to lure Iran back into the nuclear deal?
That's why
Okay,
America's not going to sell it to them.
exactly. Okay. So therefore, if America doesn't sell it to them, they don't have an ability to actually execute it.
I
They
think
don't
they do.
even need to really. They don't even need to buy anything. These bunker busters, so to speak, are kinetic bombardment weapons these days. You just need to throw tungsten from the right altitude, and you can destroy a bunker. The new technology, they call it rods from God.
So Iran is reporting on the October 19th, so a week ago, Israel reportedly prepares for a potential strike at Iran nuclear site. So Iran preempted the news that Israel revealed yesterday. So Israel has no reason not to. Iran was already hip to Israel's plans. It says with Iran, and this is from Iran International, the news source. It says with Iran nuclear talks stalled, Israel reportedly appropriated $1.5 billion to prepare for a potential strike at Iran as U.S. tested a new bunker busting bomb. Israel's Channel 12 reported Monday that the additional money set to be approved by the government in November would pay for aircraft, intelligence gathering drones, and armaments needed for a strike against hardened Iranian nuclear targets. U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, have mentioned other options if Iran refuses to return to the nuclear talks. Tehran suspended the Vienna negotiations in June after the election of Ibrahim Raisi, a hardliner handpicked by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, although other options could mean taking Iran's case to the UN Security Council for imposing international sanctions or simply augmenting U.S. sanctions. Israel has been much more adamant that Tehran's nuclear program should be stopped at any cost. Estimates vary about when Iran could reach the nuclear threshold for a bomb, but both the West and regional countries are concerned that Tehran is building up its stockpile of enriched uranium while refusing to negotiate. Israeli officials have warned on several occasions since August that if no options are left, they would go it alone to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. That could mean that Israel might not even tolerate Iran becoming a threshold state, meaning having all the components for a bomb, but not actually deploying one. The U.S. Air Force reported on October 13th that a new 5,000-pound bunker buster munition bomb was successfully tested by the F-15E Strike Eagle warplane on October 7th. This means that the bomb can be launched from a fighter plane and could be potentially used by Israel. Any conflict with Iran could easily escalate into a separate war with the Lebanese Hezbollah Shiite military group, just north of Israel, in Lebanon, where Hezbollah has significant presence on Israel's northern border. A senior Israeli military official said on Monday that Hezbollah can fire 2,000 rockets a day at Israel if conflict breaks out. The group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, also warned his opponents in Lebanon that it has 100,000 fighters after a brief gun battle in Beirut last week. So again, who do we think is hacking Iran's gas stations and shutting off all the gas stations in Iran? By the way, 24 hours before that, the gas stations turned off. I said in this room, if you're going to do hot war, the first thing you're going to do is cyber attack their energy system.
So Tyler might have Israel audience in this room all the time, right? Listening to you.
If everyone's worried about inflation, by the way, all you need is a war, an all-out war in the Middle East to have $100 oil. It would happen really fast. Okay, so I mean, and that would be very inflationary, very fast.
Yeah, good tip. Good tip.
Okay, so let's get into this one. Next one up is from ZDNet from Lucast. Headline says SolarWinds hackers Nobelium once again strike global IT supply chains. Now watch how important this headline is. Far more important than all of your crazy cousins when they read it. Take everything you just learned from our previous discussions about whoever hacked Iran's gas stations. It's a huge mystery. No one could ever know who did that. And let's think about this next headline with that in mind. The SolarWinds hackers from Russia, from the Kremlin, Nobelium, who got all up deep into the U.S. legal infrastructure through our Microsoft email systems, is now striking global IT supply chains, Microsoft warns. Microsoft has warned that Nobelium, the hacking group behind the SolarWinds fiasco linked to the Kremlin, has targeted at least 140 resellers and technology service providers in global supply chains. On October 24, Tom Burt, Microsoft Corporate VP of Customer Security and Trust, said in an advisory that the Advanced Persistent Threat Group, or of Russian origin, has now pivoted to software and cloud service resellers in order to piggyback on any direct access to resellers may have to their customers' IT systems. Microsoft says Nobelium's latest campaign was spotted in May this year, and no less than 140 companies have been targeted, with 14 confirmed cases of compromise. Nobelium was responsible for the SolarWinds breach disclosed by Microsoft and FireEye in December 2020. SolarWinds systems were breached, and an update for Orion software was poisoned and later deployed to approximately 18,000 customers, blah, blah, blah. Now, so the Kremlin is cyber attacking 140 supply chain companies, according to Microsoft. And remember what I said, that if you're going to get into conflict, what you're going to do first is attack the critical supply chains with cyber attacks. So now you know why this headline is a little more interesting than it might first appear. And now you know why I've been saying secure your own energy, water, and food almost every day for many months. Hello from my little private paradise in Thailand, everybody. Next up, Extinction Rebellion protests unnecessary airplane travel outside Victoria International Airport. And I, again, predicted in this room multiple times, I said you're going to have very strong environmental militias are going to happen. Here they are. Here they come. An Extinction Rebellion, widely recognized as an environmental militia. Militia might be a strong word. Certainly activists. Some would say terrorists. Are protesting unnecessary airplane travel from Victoria International Airport. 7 members of Extinction Rebellion in Vancouver Island handed out pamphlets Monday outside Victoria International Airport, drawing attention to the harmful effects of airplane travel. The peaceful protest was one of multiple events the global civil disobedience movement organized in British Columbia to draw attention to air travel impact on climate change, leading up to a major international climate conference in Scotland next month. Here's the quote. "There's nothing worse for our carbon emissions than flying big planes," said Peter Carter, a member of the group and director of Victoria-based Climate Emergency Institute. "It's the single worst thing that our society is doing, so we are trying to discourage people from flying when they don't need to." Canada's greenhouse gas emissions totaled blah, blah, blah. According to David Suzuki Foundation, airline emissions make up more than 3% of total emissions in Canada. Today, we're focusing on planes, said Carter. We have to try to make people aware of all the ways in which they are unnecessarily burning carbon and emitting CO2, which is threatening our very survival. When asked about people who have no other choice than to fly, Carter said a lot of air travel is non-essential. Here's the quote, people are traveling by plane going on holidays. There is a lot of that. There's no need to do that at all. They can stay in Canada and have their holiday in Canada, he said. I'm not saying there isn't anything wrong with taking a holiday in Mexico, but flying is not the only way to do it. Erin Tinley was dropping off her brother Nick Tinley, who was flying out to Bella Bella for work as a conservation officer with the federal government, and described the protest as a little bit inconvenient, but nonetheless appreciated it. I think it's great, she said. I'm sure we're all in a way responsible for climate change, but it's a tough one, and I'm dropping off my brother who's going back to work. He's got to protect the environment in his own way. When asked how the protest would change his behavior, Nick said, that's tough. I have to evaluate how much it is worth to see my family. If I want to have less of an impact, then I have to make those sacrifices myself. This is what we can do. It would be nice to see the industry develop lower emission planes to do their part too. So you're now seeing these were people doing a protest at the airport to discourage passengers from flying on the planes they're about to get on. How long do you think it might be before people going to airports are met with some form of violence? Next up is the Japanese wedding. We'll skip that. So Dave, you just sent in this one. Google parent Alphabet posts record profits again. Yep, we covered that. Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin unveils private space station. We covered that. UK government U-turns on sewage after a Tory MP threatens rebellion. Oh, climate rebellion. Water companies will have duty to reduce impact on sewage discharges from storm overflows. Okay. And Netflix held a real-life Squid Game with red light, green light doll in the Netherlands. They took the doll from the game, Squid Game, and took it to the Netherlands, where they set it up in a public square, and citizens of the Netherlands were able to play the red light, green light game with the actual doll, which is genius marketing. Absolutely genius marketing. I think, did we go past? Oh, we're at the top of the hour again. Okay. So we will hold the rest. I still have so many hours of tweets to get through. My apologies, but we will get through them when we meet again next time. Go get yourself a little water, energy, and food. And we'll see you next time.